Hey guys, I'm Urizi. This story is all about what if Naruto created a criminal organization. When Naruto Uzumaki's dream of becoming Hokage is seemingly stolen from him, he discovers a new path. One even more difficult and harder to reach. With a family of his own making, he will take the world by storm, showing them that rogues and outcasts of the world can stand at the top. Before we proceed with the story, please like and subscribe to this channel if you liked the video, and don't forget to check the description for the other works of the author if you liked the story. Let's start. Chapter 6, Training from Hell. They had met up with Hirate later than they had planned. For one, Naruto was struggling to move. Typically an hour walk would have been nothing for Naruto. However, he had a strange suspicion that the resistance seal was adding more than twice his weight. He questioned Noriyuki about it but got a smile and a shrug for an answer. By the time they had made it back to town, Naruto wanted to just eat and go to sleep. But no. His sensei said he had some shopping he just had to do before the shops closed. Naruto was dragged around for another hour going to different shops, none of which had anything that held his interest. His gripping only gave his sensei the idea to carry everything he bought, calling it extra training. Naruto kept his mouth shut after that. When they had reached where they would be having dinner, Naruto had been surprised they had chosen a family-style restaurant. Not that he complained. He definitely enjoyed the atmosphere more at this place than that dive from earlier. That, however, didn't make it any less awkward, as the hostess trembled seeing his sensei waltz in dressed as himself. It was only worse walking in as the regular folk avoided their eyes. The cherry on top though had to be Hirate himself, sitting not in a corner booth but smack dab in the middlemost table in the restaurant. The surrounding tables looked unevenly spaced, like they had been inching away from his table. He gave them his typical unamused stare. "You're late. You know me. A century-old man on the outside and a shopping-crazed 14-year-old girl on the inside." Ha 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 ha. Noriyuki's laugh was extra loud and boisterous. The other tables gave them harsh looks. Not that Naruto blamed them. "Oh Naruto dear. You can take a break from your strength training now." Thud. Finally, he gasped, dropping the ridiculous amount of packages on the floor. He collapsed into a chair, resting his chin on the cool hardwood table. "Ah. I'm so hungry." He groaned. Hirate snorted. "If you're complaining now, I doubt you'll make it through my training tomorrow." "Wait, you're going to train me too?" Naruto was surprised. He thought the guy didn't want anything to do with him. Actually, he thought he just wanted to kill him. At least, that's what he thought from his words from before. "Sadly Naruto, I do have some business to take care of in the afternoons, so Hirate will be teaching you how to fight." "Like how to use a sword?" Noriyuki shrugged. "Maybe." "Absolutely not," Hirate snapped. "I'm going to teach you the basics of how this idiot fights. No more, no less. I'll expect nothing less than complete compliance in everything I tell you." He leaned closer to Naruto. The room felt 10 degrees colder. Naruto almost thought he could see his breath. His black eyes showing nothing but cold detachment and ire. Failure to do so will not be tolerated. Am I clear? Why yes sir. Hirate-sensei, sir." Naruto suddenly found himself losing his appetite. He was not looking forward to this. Prison was looking favorable to being alone with this guy. Hell. Jumping down a bottomless pit was up there as well. "Oh, don't be like that, Hirate-kun. Naruto's more capable than you give him credit for." Noriyuki cut in, his unnatural willfulness unfitting of his partner's threat. Hirate turned back to Noriyuki. Cocking an eyebrow, he gave the impression that he looked almost interested in that claim. "Capable? Did your little experiment actually see results?" Noriyuki threw his hands up in the air. "Sadly not. He made some progress. At least, not to the level you or I thought he might." He shrugged. "We still have plenty of time though." Hirate looked at Noriyuki for several moments. Naruto knew his sensei had just lied, for reasons he still didn't understand. He had spoken briefly about this to him on the way back. He had ordered Naruto to downplay just how fruitful their short session had been. At least until they were gone. When Naruto questioned him on it all, he said that it was, just in case. Naruto had a gut feeling he didn't want to know what that case was. Hirate gave a gruff sigh. Fine then. Naruto knew the guy didn't want to train him. Not that Naruto cared. He really didn't like him either. I can tell he's nothing but an insensitive jerk. Naruto grumbled about this bad arrangement. Noriyuki patted his shoulder. Oh, don't be like that, Naruto. Hirate's a passable instructor. He's taught dozens of students in the past. Granted, I don't think any of them actually liked him, probably because of his poor attitude. Plus his voice sounds mean. I actually think the most contributing factor is that he acts like he has a second sword up his dash. Shink. Never mind. He amended quickly. Hirate's hand partially slipping his blade from his sheath. A glare of death awaiting the end of that sentence. Ha 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 ha. Oh, that's right, I have presents. Noriyuki exclaimed loudly. Being so blatantly obvious in how he was trying to change the topic. Presents? Naruto asked excitedly. He went along with it. You bet I do. Noriyuki began rummaging through his purchases. You're gonna love it. Naruto was sitting up, peering over the paper wrappings to see what his sensei got for him. He had hoped it was some sort of weapon or new jutsu. That would be something he would really love. Ta-da! From the wrappings his overly excited sensei pulled out a rectangular-like object. An object that was definitely not a weapon, and from what Naruto saw on the front of it, not a new jutsu as well. A book. Ah ha 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 ha. It's even more fun knowing how you would react. Yes, it's a book. Several in fact. All for you. He gestured to the stack he had made Naruto carry earlier. There were about 8 of them, all of various thickness. You'll need to read these as part of your training. Naruto frowned while picking up the book. The Last Lament of the King in the Sky. That was the title. Naruto flipped to the end trying to see how many pages the thing was. The frown deepened. This thing has like 500 pages. He turned to his sensei. How is reading this part of my training? Noriyuki resting his cheek on his palm, giving Naruto a mischievous smile. It's to help you better use your inherent ability as a Jinchuriki. He pointed to Naruto's stomach. You might not know this, but every Jinchuriki has an inherent ability imparted to them through the beast's chakra mutating their hosts. Mutation? An inherent ability? What are those? You can think of them like pseudo-kekai genkai. Special abilities that someone wasn't born with but gains as a result from an external force. In this case, when a tailed beast's chakra is heavily exposed to someone else's chakra, they can either get altered physical traits, like your whisker marks for example, or a change in the nature of their chakra. For example, some Jinchuriki can produce special fire, grow wings, produce ink dash. Manipulate sand, Naruto mumbled softly. Listening to his sensei's words had made him instantly think about Gaara. His ability to manipulate sand because of that giant monster that was inside of him made sense now. It was scary how powerful it was. That ultimate defense and complete control over it made him incredibly strong. If that was the case, then he might also have some special ability. Indeed. However, in most cases people who are exposed to their chakra suffer from the strain and ultimately die. Many have tried gaining their power through many different means only to kill themselves in the process. Then what about me, sensei? I don't think I've noticed anything like that. Naruto folded his arms. He curled his mouth trying to think. Or I don't think I have. I don't really have any explanation for that, Noriyuki admitted. I wasn't there to see the sealing being done. Unless there was something unique about how it was sealed, you should have shown some sort of manifestation of the Nine Tails ability. You were heavily exposed to its chakra after all. Does that mean I don't have an ability then? Ha ha ha. No, you don't have to worry. That adjustment I made should have strengthened your exposure even more. Luckily for you, during our travels I found out what special ability the Nine Tails gives its hosts. What is it? Please tell me it's something strong, Naruto half begged, half prayed. It allows one's host to sense negative emotions within others. While it's not specifically combat-oriented, it has its benefits. Essentially, you can sense those who have hostile intent towards you and sense danger. Naruto's head tilted. Sensing danger? Like from enemies and stuff. Pursing his lips further in thought, he considered the ability itself. That sounds kinda useful, but still it's not some ultimate defense or a special super ultimate signature attack, he thought, disappointed. Noriyuki nodded. It can mean the difference between life and death in some cases. So besides your concentration, I know your interest in reading is also terrible. After we're gone you'll have to be able to learn on your own, so this should help develop an interest and grow in this area. Right, Mr. Scroll Stealer? Noriyuki jabbed. Naruto looked away, scratching his head in embarrassment. He probably shouldn't have blabbed that so casually back in the ruins. Too late for that now though. So then, are reading books going to help me train this ability then? No, it's not. This isn't a skill that I or anyone else can train you in. It's something that comes from experience and training over a lifetime. But this is still secondary to their main purpose, and that is to help you in building a better understanding of others. Understanding others. Naruto's eyes flickered as something pinged inside him. It was a strange feeling. Something he couldn't really understand. The words though felt like they were important to him. These books aren't textbooks or manuals on technical skills, Naruto. These are novels written by men and women who wanted to write about stories that captured what the world was really like without the bias of any particular group or creed, Noriyuki explained. Some of these are books I read a long time ago and helped me get a better understanding of the world. I only wish more people, especially shinobi, would read them. It would certainly help them overcome the true weakness that holds them back. Naruto remembered his sensei saying that yesterday. The weakness his teachers had. The reason they never explained the true purpose of the shadow clones to him. You said that before. What's this weakness you're talking about? Noriyuki scratched his chin. It's difficult to explain. Maybe if I... Okay, let's do it like this then. Let me ask you this, Naruto. What world do we live in? Naruto blinked thrice. What world do we live in? What kind of question is that? I mean, we live on planet Earth, right? It was a strange question for Naruto. It was like asking him what color the sky was. The answer is obvious. Ha 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 ha. Well, you're not wrong. However, if you asked a more experienced and battle-hardened shinobi, they would probably say it's the shinobi world. The shinobi world, Naruto repeated. Now that he thought of it, there were a number of times that he heard that saying. Truthfully, he never thought anything of it. Yes. They have this idea that being a ninja is so fundamentally important that they don't see the whole world for what it is. A mixture of all different types of people with different lives and ideals. He paused, crooking his thumb to his partner. Hirate here isn't a ninja, yet those idiots who claim shinobi to be the dominant force in the world, you would be cut down in a second by him. It's this mentality that holds them back. They live in a world where they feel like they could die at any second, so they play it safe. Never really experiencing the other 99% of what this world has to offer. Never expressing themselves because it doesn't fit into some arbitrary shinobi rules. Most importantly, they put barriers around their hearts in fear of getting hurt and never really connecting with anyone, comrades or otherwise. Huh? They put barriers around their hearts. Naruto frowned at this. He wasn't a stranger to others looking at him like he was an outsider. Especially growing up in the Leaf Village. It's because they see it as the shinobi world. Many think of this world as cursed. Noriyuki shook his head. His words were filled with so much disappointment. If they only see the world as cursed, then that's all it'll ever be to them. However, if they took chances and really exposed themselves to things outside what is required as a ninja, then they would grow to heights they couldn't before. Naruto's eyes widened. He was starting to get it now. That feeling was rising in him again. You're saying they never said anything because they were trying not to get too close to me? Naruto questioned. Don't take it personal, Naruto. It is natural for people to avoid things that may hurt them. Everyone has their hidden sides, but that doesn't mean you have to. Especially when the last part of your training will be addressing that. Last part of my training. In the mornings will be meditation training. In the afternoons there will be physical conditioning. Lastly, in the evenings you'll be doing special missions that will help you mature and grow fundamentally as a person. It will help you become more accustomed to life as a rogue as well. Mission. That's good to me, Naruto chirped. He was always down to do missions. That's right. Every day I will give you one special task to complete. These won't be your typical missions though. They will help get you out of your element and give you a buffet of different experiences. After we eat you can do your first one. Naruto stood up in excitement. Okay. Before that though, Noriyuki turned towards the front of the restaurant. Can we please get some service over here? Noriyuki called out to the hostess up front. Sure enough, a young waitress came up to us. She didn't look all that comfortable with having to serve their table. Naruto could see the fake smile of her face a mile away. She was clearly unhappy with his sensei's rowdiness. His experience with Sakura gave him that insight. Yes. What can I get you? She asked. 3 menus please. 2 adults menus and 1 kids. Also, something alcoholic would be great too. Her smile became slightly strained. The menus I can get for you, but our establishment is for family-oriented customers, so we don't serve alcohol here. If you wish, there are other establishments that may be better suited for you. The undertone was clear. Nah, that's all right. Just get us something fruity to drink then. The willfully oblivious thief said, waving the waitress off. The girl didn't say anything after that. Merely walked away. Naruto was upset. Not really liking his sensei's jab at his age. How could he after he had already had his first glass of alcohol? I don't need a kid's menu, you know. I'm not a little kid sensei. Hirate snorted at that comment, much to Naruto's irritation. Noriyuki blinked. He gave Naruto a blank look. Who said the kid's menu was for you? Naruto blinked back. Slowly realizing what that meant, his mouth dropped. Really? You're ordering from the kid's menu? Why? Noriyuki wagged his finger. Tisk 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 Naruto. You really need to pay more attention. You didn't think I chose this place on some whim, do you? No, why? Naruto thought that it was Hirate who chose it. In hindsight, that seemed like a terrible assumption. Because this restaurant chain has a promotion going on where you get a free toy when you purchase a kid's meal. There's a set of 5, so I intend to collect them all. So we'll be eating dinner here every night, he exclaimed boldly. He raised a foot on the table, pointing at Naruto. By the end of our training I will have all 5. Everything else be damned. Naruto, no, everyone in the entire restaurant sweat dropped at his outburst. Naruto turned to Hirate for some kind of input. The stoic man could only palm his face at his partner's actions. Naruto really wanted to ask why a grown man wanted kids' toys, but he was too afraid of what the answer would be. He sighed. Oh brother. Why do all my senseis have to be weirdos? Ah. What a satisfying meal that was. I can't wait to come back tomorrow. Ha 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 ha. Noriyuki exclaimed as he exited the restaurant. He tossed the toy cat he had been hard-pressed to obtain in the air before catching it again. He had a proud look on his face. I can't wait for tomorrow. I wonder which one I'll get next. Can you believe that man? Sheesh. Not so loud. He looks dangerous. Plus he has those goons with him. Why can't those types stay out of our town? Naruto groaned so loud it gave him a whir. Whispers going on like this from the onlookers. Naruto had thought once the food came his sensei would settle down. That was just naive thinking on his part. When the waitress refused to give him the stupid toy he wanted because he wasn't a kid, things went downhill fast. Throwing a tantrum would be an understatement. He demanded to see the manager, who looked like he was going to piss himself from when he threatened to run them out of business for what he called false advertisement. The manager folded. Personally giving him the stupid thing, apologizing the whole way through. Oh, and on top of all this they almost got thrown out because his idiot sensei poured alcohol he had hidden away in a flask into his sweet tea. When the waitress called him on it he claimed it wasn't alcohol, rather it was a flavor enhancer. He then gave her a huge tip and told her that they would be back tomorrow. Completely shameless. Don't you have even the slight decency to feel embarrassed? Naruto exclaimed. Norituki turned around slowly. His smile was so malicious it made Naruto back up. Oh? You think that was embarrassing? Well, I hate to break it to ya, Naruto, but you're in for a world of it for the special training I have planned. Mwahahaha. Prepare yourself for what I have in store. Ha. I'm not afraid of anything. Naruto shook his fist. So I don't care what you come up with. Bring it on already. Brave last words. Alright, brace yourself then. Noriyuki scanned the plaza looking around for something. It was much more scarce than it had been during the day. The sun was setting already and the only lights out were paper lanterns and shops signs that dotted some of the building roofs. Most of the shops had already closed down for the day too. At least whatever nonsense his sensei had planned wouldn't be in broad daylight. Aha! Over there. Noriyuki pointed. Naruto scanned the direction he was pointing. Scrunching his eyes, he could see 3 girls by a bench near the fountain that was built in the middle of the plaza. They were all pretty cute in Naruto's opinion, but they were also a little bit older than him as well. They were just talking and giggling amongst themselves. Those girls. What about them? Noriyuki's smile lit up like a 1000-watt bulb. Your challenge for this evening is for you to go up and kiss one of those girls. Naruto's entire life paused. He had to process for several moments what he was just challenged to do. He did a double take as his brain began to short-circuit. He wants me to do what? Naruto couldn't help but internally cringe as his confidence quickly began to slip away. Noriyuki haughtily covered his mouth with his hand. Oh ho? Don't tell me I was right before and you really don't like girls. Perhaps I should find a nice young man for you to kiss instead. You? No way. Of course I like girls. It's just, I only like Sakura. Hirate pushed past Naruto suddenly. He tossed a key to his sensei before walking away. The hotel is by the pier on the northeast side of town. I'm retiring for the evening. You two can stay out and act like fools all you want. He turned back, showing a single eye towards Naruto. Don't be late for training or else. Before he could blink, the dangerous swordsman had vanished. Naruto grimaced at the implications. There was a pregnant pause as it left the two of them standing alone. So Sakura, huh? You mentioned her before. I'm guessing she is your sweetheart back in the Leaf Village. How often have you kissed her then? Naruto's face became red. It began heating up, fantasizing about getting a kiss from her. He poked his fingers together bashfully. Well, I haven't actually kissed her yet. I did try to hug her once, he mumbled. A shiver then went down his spine about what happened after that incident. She was not pleased with the attempt. Ha 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 ha. I'm guessing from that nervous twitch she decked you into the ground. Naruto's whole body sagged. It wasn't funny. He had no idea how scary Sakura was when she got angry. I am curious though. Why wouldn't she like you? You may not be the most mature kid your age, but you have a kind soul. Is it because of the 9 tails? No. None of my friends know. Sakura, she is in love with Sasuke. Another thought that pained him. He had no idea how the outcome of their fight ended. He vaguely recalled tripping right as they had their final clash, but that could have been some dream. He had seen the medical corps take him from Kakashi-sensei as he carried them back to the village. He didn't know how serious his injuries were though. Hell, he didn't know how his friends were doing. They had separated in that mission. So if I am understanding right, then you like Sakura and she is in love with Sasuke. Naruto nodded mutely. This is how it had always been. He would have done anything for Sakura. Even help her win over Sasuke if she asked, as much as it would hurt. No matter what he did, she would never look his way. Even during that small date they had after he and Sasuke fought on the hospital roof, all she talked about was him. Becoming Hokage had sometimes seemed simpler than trying to get her to notice him. It was just so hard sometimes seeing her smile at Sasuke and not at him. I'm disappointed in you, Naruto. Noriyuki spoke coldly. Naruto head shot to his sensei. His voice startled him. His eyes were cold. Colder than he had ever seen them up until now. He stood frozen as he didn't understand what had just happened. He didn't do anything. Sensei. You would sacrifice your own happiness for her sake, wouldn't you? You still would? Wouldn't you? He shook his head. Perhaps Hirate was right. Maybe I shouldn't train you. What? Why? I haven't done anything. Naruto was surprised. How did his sensei know what he was thinking? You're right, you haven't done anything. You probably never would too. You would have never made a move and just allowed the girl you liked to just go off without even giving her so much as a peck on the cheek. If you really do claim to love her, then steal her away. Show her that nothing will stop you from winning her over. Not even her own hatred for you. So every time she tries to smack you for getting too close, catch her fist and embrace her. Shower her with kisses. Don't let her dictate the relationship between you. Noriyuki gripped Naruto's tie, pulling his face right up to his own. You're Naruto Uzumaki. The goddamn Jinchuriki of the nine-tailed fox and the man who will surpass all the Kage, right? His sensei was right. He had always fought for her, but he always lacked the confidence to really show her how he felt. For Naruto, though, it didn't mean that there weren't limits or boundaries. I know that. But forcing Sakura to do things she doesn't like is wrong. He yelled back. It's not about what's right or what's wrong. You're sacrificing your life and happiness when your time on this planet is too precious to waste. You only get this one life, Naruto, that's it. You're young, so you have an opportunity to live a full life without regrets. Something I never got until I was old and gray. You're a rogue now. You take what you want regardless of the consequences. That's something that every Kage so far has struggled with. They had to live with regrets because they were too busy doing what others wanted and not what they felt was right. Noriyuki took a breath. He let go of Naruto's tie, patting it flat. If you're going to sacrifice your own happiness like that, then I won't train you anymore. Naruto gritted his teeth. Yeah, but no matter what I do, I know she'll still love Sasuke. Why couldn't he understand that? Even if Sasuke hurt or scorned her, nothing would change her feelings. Sakura would always love Sasuke. That's right. Why haven't I ever realized that before? Naruto thought bitterly. I don't understand why that changes anything. It doesn't really matter. Of course it matters. If she loves Sasuke, then she'll never love me. Noriyuki opened his mouth to speak but seemed to be lacking his voice. He palmed his face, digging his nails into his brows. I can't even. How is it possible to say the most pig-headed and idiotic things so easily? Once more I reiterate how little you know about love. What universal law is there that she can't love both of you at the same time? Like being hit in the head with a hammer, Naruto's eyes widened. His mouth gaped open like an idiot. Could she? Wait then, can't I? His words couldn't keep up with his. More he thought about it, the more Naruto was beginning to see there were a lot of holes in his thoughts. He had only ever really liked Sakura, but he wasn't sure if that was true with her for Sasuke. Even if the two really did fall in love, that doesn't mean you can't sneak her away from him from time to time. You should never limit yourself when it comes to love, Naruto. It's neither perverted nor unwholesome. Filling yourself with love gives you unimaginable power and makes the world so much brighter. Personally, I have fallen in love with several women over the decades, and like you, some of them were already in love with other men. He scratched his chin, smiling. Some of them were even married with children, yet that didn't stop me. Ha 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 ha. His voice was filled with nostalgia. Most likely reminiscing about those women. Those were good times. Even now I still love each and every one of them. They filled my life with so much joy. Naruto's face brightened. His chest felt lighter. The idea was weird to him, but for some reason he liked it. Maybe there's still a chance then. Noriyuki patted Naruto's shoulder. There's always a chance. Criminal rule number 3, don't live with regrets. So make choices that won't force you to make unnecessary sacrifices. He then leaned in closer. He whispered in Naruto's ear, also, girls like men with experience. Especially with kissing. Naruto's face blushed. He knew enough to know what that meant. Experience. His voice cracked. That's right, and I see 3 girls who would be perfect in gaining it, he whispered. Naruto gulped. He would buck up and do this then. He only saw one outcome from this though. One that left him on the ground after being walked on by 3 girls. Not a pleasant outcome. If they had been enemy kunoichi that he had to defeat, then that would be a different story. These 3 were dressed like they had just gone shopping for new makeup. Would you like some advice? Noriyuki offered. Yes please, Naruto replied quietly. His sensei wrapped an arm around his shoulder. He whispered into his ear what he should say and how to approach them. He talked for about 5 minutes on how to behave and how to smile. Naruto thought the whole way about it was weird and very risky should it not pan out. He would certainly never say these words to Sakura, let alone 3 strangers. Are you sure? Naruto asked, concerned for his well-being. Absolutely. Oh. Here, this should help as well. He dug his hand into his jacket, pulling out his flask again. He held it out to Naruto. Take a sip. Naruto grumbled. I know I already had wine today, but minors shouldn't be drinking alcohol. Just do it. There's a reason it's called liquid courage. Sighing, Naruto unscrewed the cap. The scent was much worse than the wine, so he pinched his nose as he tilted his head back. If Naruto could compare it to anything, it would be a mixture of cinnamon and hot sauce. Ugh. Ka. His throat burned slightly. His body felt warm again like with the wine. This felt much more potent though. That tasted like crap, sensei, he wheezed. Yeah, don't take the name, flavor enhancer, at face value. People don't drink Land of Honey Rumba for its taste. Now go, my young apprentice. Go and get some girly action. Naruto muttered curses. Every step he took towards the 3 girls felt like lead. The resistance seal wasn't helping either. They hadn't noticed him approach yet. Too ingrained in their own conversation. Naruto hesitated a moment. Turning back to look at his sensei for some sign that he had changed his mind. No such luck. He sat lounging on a bench on the other side of the plaza. A mischievous grin on his face, his legs crossed and shooting him a thumbs up. Just perfect, he muttered. Well, it's not like he had anything to lose. Excuse me? The 3 girls stopped their conversation abruptly. All 3 turning towards him. They had unreadable looks as they glanced at him. Most likely appraising his outfit. I'm sorry to bother you ladies, but I was wondering if you could help me. One of the girls, the one with brown hair and small freckles on her face, spoke first. Maybe. What is it? Naruto's heart was pounding. He was going to say what his sensei told him, but it still didn't make it any easier. He didn't really believe any girl would fall for this crap. You see, I'm new to town. I was looking for something that was rumored to be nearby and thought you might know. What is it you are looking for? She asked. Mermaids. The 3 took on surprised looks. It was strange to hear someone blurt out they were looking for some mythical creature. The brown-haired girl looked to her 2 friends to see if they were just as confused. You're actually looking for mermaids? She asked in disbelief. I had heard rumors they were sighted near here. They are said to be the most beautiful creatures in the world, with voices of that of angels. My master told me they were real and he's never lied to me before. Naruto really tried to sound genuine with his words. His sensei said he needed to sound confident and sincere when he spoke. The 3 chatted quietly amongst themselves, occasionally giving glances towards him. It was the shorter black-haired girl who replied. I'm sorry, but we haven't seen or heard anything about mermaids. There would have been a big commotion if there was. I think whoever told you probably lied. Naruto rubbed his chin, trying to do his best imitation of his sensei as he could. His face took on a serious look. No, I think I'm on the right track. They say mermaids can sometimes split their tails to walk on land. I think you 3 are just the proof I needed to know that they are real. The 3 stood their eyes wide and looked taken aback. Naruto could tell they weren't expecting to hear something like that. It even surprised him that he was even able to say it with a straight face. Sure, they were cute, but Sakura still took the cake in that regard. Tee-hee-hee-hee. Well, aren't you the little charmer? The taller dark brown-haired girl said. She stood up, standing half a head taller than him. She was skinny but not overly so. She looked a year or two older than him. She gave him an amused look. To be honest, I didn't think someone dressed like you would come up with something like that. Naruto frowned. Come up with what? Forgive me, but I only spoke the truth. He then took off his hat, extending a hand towards her. Please forgive me though if I sounded insincere. It was not my intention to be rude. My name is Naruto, may I have the pleasure of your name, Miss Mermaid? My name is Midori, she replied. To Naruto's surprise, she took his hand and sealed Naruto's challenge with his sensei. He lowered his head as he raised her hand towards his lips. He placed a small kiss on her knuckles. As he let go, he made sure to maintain a small smile and kept eye contact with her. It's nice to meet you, Midori-chan. I'll be in town for a few weeks, maybe I could have the pleasure of having you show me around. Although, I'm sure the three of you probably spend most of your time chasing all the boys away. They probably don't give you a moment of peace. Midori giggled. If only. You really are a little charmer, aren't ya? Sure, we can show you around Nagaya sometime. She pointed to her friends. These are my friends, Anoka and Siya. The two girls also stood now beside Midori. The brown-haired one with freckles, Anoka, placed a hand underneath his cheek. He really is a cutie, isn't he? That suit makes him look so adorable. Perhaps we should take him back to your place, Midori. We could dress him up, suggested Siya. The other two giggled at that. Naruto was in internal panic mode right now. Noriyuki had only told him what to say up until he asked to be shown around. He was in unfamiliar territory right now. Midori huffed sadly, my parents won't be leaving for another week. We could show him around tomorrow though. What do you say? The two girls nodded. Naruto took this chance to excuse himself. Sure, that sounds fun, he spoke, placing his hat back on. We'll be here tomorrow afternoon around 5. Sounds good to you, cutie? Naruto gave a muted nod. Midori leaned in, placing her lips on his cheek. It's a date then, she whispered. Come on girls, it's getting late. We better get back before my mom flips. The three walked off, giving him quick goodbyes. They giggled some more. Most likely still talking about him. Naruto could barely contain himself before they were out of his sight. Naruto bolted towards his sensei. He jumped towards him in a massive dive. You did well. Ha 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 ha. Noriyuki exclaimed as he caught Naruto in his arms. He spun him around as Naruto's excitement was too infectious. Date. Date. I have a date. He sang excitedly. He was on top of the world now. He got a pretty girl to not only go on a date with him but give him a kiss. He would never doubt his sensei again. Ha 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 ha. I'm happy for you, Naruto. But have you actually gone on a real date before? Naruto's smile turned upside down. The cruel realization of tomorrow dawned on him. His body became rigid. Crap. Tsunade Senju, the recently appointed 5th Hokage, rubbed her forehead due to the massive headache she had developed over the last few days. It wasn't a few little things like all the official documents that had piled up in the month that the village had gone without their Hokage. Hell, it wasn't even the fact that she took charge of the village when half its strength had been cut because of her vile teammates' invasion. No, the headache formed from two little genin, the recaptured scion of the Uchiha clan, Sasuke Uchiha, who had gone AWOL 3 nights ago, and the boy that inspired her to come back to take on all this mess, Naruto Uzumaki. While she held the stupid Uchiha boy in contempt for all the trouble he caused. Trouble that nearly cost the lives of some of the Leaf Village's promising future shinobi. She couldn't only feel worry and concern for the little blonde knucklehead. She couldn't imagine what he must have been feeling at that moment. Especially after such a heart-wrenching mission to bring his comrade back, it must have been unbearable to come into that meeting, his body still in critical condition after that fight. It was this reason she hadn't slept in 3 days. That official sanction and arrest warrant came like a slap in the face after they had taken off after Sasuke. She hardly believed it when she had read its contents. Like some bad joke. When the Madoka-sama's top minister of justice came an hour later, she knew it was the real deal. She nearly murdered the man when she found out the reason for the warrant. Even explained the sheer impossibility of it due to the circumstances. While the man was sympathetic, he was only a pawn. It was being supported by the feudal lord, so there was nothing he could do except go by what he was ordered. What followed was an hour of property damage she would be paying for out of her own allowances. It was still worth it. Getting together with the other shinobi heads and elders about this issue had also been a pain. Many had been away on missions. That didn't stop the meeting though. It had been the consensus that this had been some sort of trap or ploy to get Naruto. Given Orochimaru's hatred for the boy, it was suspected he may have manipulated someone in the feudal lord's court to push for this. If not him, then someone had to play it safe though. Put on an act that would keep him safe yet allow the one who set the trap to show himself. For that though, the meeting had to seem as genuine as they could make it, and they had to send him somewhere that the culprit would be more willing to strike. Somewhere away from the village. Hojokijo. He should have arrived by now, she muttered to herself. It was the most secure place they could think of. Not a pleasant place, but Naruto was tough. He wasn't alone either. Kakashi had been sent to infiltrate the prison as a guard to watch over him. She had planned for him to explain details of the threat to Naruto and why they had to move quickly. He would be pissed when they brought him back, but she would give him as much ramen as he could eat to make it up to him. Tell him that it's required sometimes as Hokage. She groaned. It still meant she had to go through all the documents pertaining to the warrant if they wanted to expose whoever did this. She hadn't been exaggerating when she said years. Files and documents, many classified for her eyes only, had been sent. It meant she couldn't divulge the sensitive information that was kept secret to protect Naruto from being released. Another hint that suggested this was a targeted attack against the boy. No milady. You can't bet Taunton, Shizune moaned. She was still asleep. Huddled into the corner with said piglet. A pile of paper being her makeshift bed. Tsunade couldn't help but muster a small smile at her apprentice's endurance. She had been awake until an hour ago. She too had been working hard for Naruto's sake to sort through all this mess. Tsunade looked out the window. The sun would be up in a few hours. Now would be the perfect time to do her rounds at the hospital and to check on Shikamaru's team. Before leaving, she took off her green jacket, laying it over Shizune and Taunton. She needed the sleep, especially after those healing sessions on the Hyuga boy. The village was silent. Not much happening around this time. Peaceful and quiet. Just how she liked it. It was also the best time to do her hospital rounds. When she arrived, the head nurse greeted her. She led her through the halls towards their patients. "How are the patients' conditions?" she asked. The nurse flipped through her chart. Neji Hyuga is out of danger. His injuries and damage to his left shoulder have mended. He needs rest at the moment. Koji Akimichi still needs intravenous injections. Even with their clan medicine, his body is slow to recover from the strain those pills placed on him. Tsunade nodded. "We're lucky the Akimichi and Nara were so methodical in their research," she acknowledged. Continue. Kiba and Yazuka should be out of the hospital by the end of the week. His sister has reported that the ninja hound Akamaru may need longer to recover. Shikamaru Nara has already been dash. Yes, I know Shikamaru is fine. Quit stalling and tell me about the Uchiha, she ordered. The nurse paused. Standing outside said patient room, she flipped to the page containing that information. Sasuke Uchiha. No major injuries besides the internal damage to his stomach. The patient hasn't regained consciousness yet, and there is no indication of when he will. Tsunade acknowledged the Black Ops guarding the room. Hidden in the corner across the hall. This room had been separated from the rest. In case of any further attempts to take him. What about the curse seal? Have there been any changes? Any disruptions to the boy's chakra? For everyone's safety, his chakra had been sealed. However, much of the curse seal had always been unknown. So no chances would be taken. There has been no disruption to his vitals or his chakra, Lady Hokage, the nurse stated. Good work. I'll let you get back to your duties. The nurse bowed as Tsunade made her way to the opposite wing of the hospital. There was one more patient she had to check on. One she had hoped would have been awake by now. She nodded to the Umbu guarding the room. Both gave a courteous salute as she entered. The room was pitch black as there were no windows. It was too risky given the patient and any who may take this opportunity to strike him down while he was helpless. She could hear his faint breathing. His respirator going off to the sounds of the life support machine. He looked so frail and weak right now it made her realize how much time had passed since she had been back. She took a seat next to his bed. "What I wouldn't do to have you here to guide me, sensei." She held his hand. Slowly they had been gaining their color back. When she first arrived they had been at the point where they almost amputated them because of the cellular death. She shouldn't have even attempted to heal them after such an extended period. It was only because of the round-the-clock healing that they remained stable enough by the time she returned. What remained was the most extreme case of chakra exhaustion she had ever seen. Whatever jutsu he had used to destroy Orochimaru's arms left him in a state where he needed jolts of chakra infused in him to keep his coils from depleting. It was only now that he was taken off that treatment. He would recover eventually, although his days as a ninja were pretty much over. "When you wake up you can finally retire in peace, sensei." She felt a small twitch in his hand. A sign he was responsive and on the mend. "Although I may need you to help me with this situation. I'm sure you would have had the culprit caught already. I just wish that dash." Knock, knock. "Enter." An Umbu walked in. He kneeled before her. "Sorry for the intrusion, milady. I have word from Kakashi on his assignment. He says it's urgent." Tsunade frowned. "From Kakashi? Already? Let's hear it then." It had barely been 2 days. He had sent him out after he got back from a mission shortly after Naruto was shipped out. He said he would send word within a week about the situation. A tightness in her chest began to fill her. Maybe the culprit behind this stuck sooner than we planned, she thought, concerned about the blonde-haired boy. At once, he motioned towards the door. It slid open to reveal no one standing behind it. From round the bed a small pug walked up to her. It had a leaf headband wrapped around its head and a small blue vest on. "Greetings, Lady Hokage. I bring news." It spoke in its uncharacteristically gruff voice. "You're Pakun, right? One of Kakashi's ninja hounds." "Yes. Kakashi sent me back with a report." From his small vest a small scroll was pulled out. He placed it on the floor in front of him. "Before you read it, Kakashi asked that I be summoned to him before morning came with further instructions." "That should be fine. Can't you give me a status update?" Kakashi managed to infiltrate as one of the guards within half a day of Naruto's arrival. Didn't want the kid to worry. "Yes. Go on," Tsunade encouraged. The small pug shook his head. It squatted low, placing its paws over its ears. "Sorry milady, but Kakashi's report explains the rest." "What the heck are you doing?" "Bracing myself. Read it and you'll understand." Nodding, she did so, unfurling the small scroll. She glanced at the contents before going back and starting from the beginning again. Making sure to read it slowly. Even then she read it a third time. She had been sleep deprived. She could have been misreading it. Her famous bad luck kicked her in the teeth. To her shock, everything she had just reread was real and not some delusional fantasy. Her hand trembled. Both in anger and shock. "Is everything in this report true?" she asked. The room became much colder as a result. "MHM." The pug acknowledged as further curled up into a small ball. She stood up. Body trembling in rage. All the hard work and planning she had put into this had just gone up in smoke. All to protect that stupid, idiotic, snot-nosed punk, who did something so impossible that it only made sense since he was the most unpredictable being on this entire planet. If he made it back to the village in one piece, she would force him to eat nothing but vegetables until he was her age. She would live that long just to spite him. She didn't want to blow up here. She ran out of the room, pushing the hapless Umbu out of the way as she tore the report to shreds. She jumped out of the hallway window and down into the field outside. She couldn't hold it any longer. "Naruto, oh!" The wind rustled the trees. What was that?" Naruto turned his head. "What was what?" Noriyuki asked. Naruto scratched his head. I could have sworn I heard someone say my name. I always hear people chanting my name. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, whatever, sensei. Can we get on with training already? Naruto griped. He felt a small rumble in his stomach. Actually, can we get some breakfast first? The sun had just come up. Naruto slept like a log last night. Their hotel had nice hot springs in it that really helped heal and ease his injuries. Noriyuki told him that the land of hot water was famous because of them. He couldn't wait to go back later tonight. Sorry, but you won't be getting any breakfast from now on. In fact, you won't be getting lunch either. Just water. What? Why? Are you trying to starve me to death, sensei? Ha 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 ha. Relax. It's to help with your training. How does starving help with training? Those monks I told you about. The ones who spend their entire lifetime honing their meditation, do so in pretty much every extreme circumstance you can imagine. They fast for days at a time, using only meditation to sustain them. So this training will ensure I never feel hungry? I don't really see that as a benefit. Getting hungry and craving ramen was a magical feeling for Naruto. He groaned. Yeah, but, come on. Can't I get an apple or something small? Sorry. To fully immerse yourself in this training, you'll need to face stressors while you meditate. It's not enough to do so when things are calm and quiet. You need to harness your focus when you're facing distractions or when your body is in pain or discomfort. The Grand Masters of these temples reached a point where they could block out pain and fatigue while endure temperatures unlivable by normal people. I'm expected to do all that? He asked incredulously. That all sounded cool, but he didn't see how he could do stuff like that by pretending to eat bowls of ramen. If it was some jutsu, then that would be more believable. No. Just ensuring you can calm your mind and focus under tension should be enough. Arg. Fine. I will get to eat, right? Yes, Noriyuki groaned, palming his face. You're still growing, so you won't be fasting. You'll get one meal a day and it'll be quite substantial. So you are going to have to wait until dinner. Okay. Naruto nodded, smiling. It just meant that he would eat a full day's worth of food in one go. Something he could totally do. I swear all you think of is food. Now quit wasting daylight, we'll be making this session shorter than normal. Why are we stopping early? I thought we were training all morning. Noriyuki walked up to him, placing both his hands on his shoulders. He gave him one of his patented concerned looks. Like he said something so pitiable. It confused the hell out of Naruto. What? My poor little student, he sobbed. So totally oblivious to the fact that he's a clueless fool about to go on his first date this evening. He wiped his eye with his finger. Naruto smacked his arms away. Ha! I'm not worried. They are just showing me around town. Nothing too complicated about that. Oh ho. So what if they take you back to one of their houses? What do you plan to do then? If you refuse, it may hurt their feelings, Noriyuki stated. Well. Or what if they take you shopping? Do you know what girls like or what they like to buy? Do you know if it'll be just one of them or will it be all three? They have more friends they want to bring along. What then? Naruto deflated. He had been nervous about it but thought he could just wing it since he didn't have to do anything crazy again like getting a kiss. He thought he could just hang out like he did with Sakura or Hinata. Naruto mumbled something quietly. Noriyuki cupped his ear. A shit-eating grin on his face. I'm sorry, what was that? Naruto mumbled again. A little louder but still indecipherable. Were you saying, please master? Please impart your great wisdom so that I don't make an ass of myself. Because that's what it sounded like to me. Naruto hung his head. Yes, please. Ha 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 ha. Of course. I would be hard-pressed to let you out in the world knowing you'd get shot down by just any girl. Naruto was thankful for that. Although he was a little irritated at how little faith in his skills with girls his sensei had in him. He knew a lot. He made an entire jutsu based on his own observation and research. A sad thought resounded in his head. Ah. I'm just as bad as Pervy Sage, aren't I? He flailed around, completely appalled by the comparison. What's wrong now? Don't ask. Fine then. Create as many clones as you can and start your exercises. I'll tap your forehead when the training is over. He tapped Naruto's forehead twice as a reference. Nodding, Naruto created as many clones as he could. The smoke filled the clearing until roughly 500 clones appeared. Less than he had yesterday. Noriyuki didn't say anything though, so he sat down on the stump like yesterday and began his exercises. Starting with his hands clapping together. He was wondering if his vision would be weird afterwards like before. It was certainly different from the meditation that Kakashi-sensei made him do with Sasuke and Sakura. I still don't know what's happening to them, he thought sadly. He wondered if they were worried about him as well. Did they know what was happening? Or were they left in the dark about his whole ordeal? He assumed they wouldn't be let in on what they booked him for if even he didn't know. Those thoughts just made him more depressed. Hey Naruto, look at this! Noriyuki exclaimed. Naruto's eyes shot open. Right in front of him was his sensei holding his hand out right in front of him. He hadn't even made it through his third round yet. Hell flick. OWWW. Naruto fell backwards, clasping his hand over his forehead in pain. He had only been flicked, but it felt like he had been hit with a rock. What the hell was that for, sensei? For not listening. I told you that the session would be over when I tapped your forehead. Yeah, but you said to look. Yes, but I also said this training would also include distractions as well. He performed some hand seals, then smacked the ground. In a puff of smoke several items appeared. There were a variety of musical instruments, fireworks, and even explosive notes. As you can see, you'll have your work cut out for ya, Noriyuki said, giving a malicious grin. Fine, but did you have to flick me so hard for just opening my eyes? It really hurt. Do you exercise properly next time and I won't have a reason to. Although, to be honest, it doesn't matter if you do it with your eyes open or not. So long as you visualize and focus on gratitude. If it doesn't matter, then why did you do it? Noriyuki's eyes bore into him. His smile was replaced with a frown. He pointed at Naruto's head. Because you weren't actually doing the exercises. You were only going through the motions. Your thoughts weren't on gratitude but on other things. Naruto flinched. I noticed before, but it's like you know what I'm thinking, sensei. Can you actually read minds? The prospect of it sorta made him feel off guard. He didn't like someone knowing what he was thinking. Some of his thoughts were embarrassing. His sensei shrugged. Who can say? I am empathy though. Like the Nine Tails ability, I can also sense emotions in others. So I can tell when you are distressed. Naruto's eyes widened. Does that mean you have something inside you too, sensei? Another thought that had been on the back of his mind was why this strange man, who he had just met yesterday, had been helping him. He hadn't asked yet. A part of him didn't want to for some reason. He had a feeling that Noriyuki was trustworthy, so it wasn't an issue. Maybe if they were similar it would explain why he knew so much about the Nine Tails and why he would help him out. No, that ability isn't because I have a tailed beast sealed in me. Oh. Then how can you dash? Noriyuki held his hand out. Save it for another time, Naruto. Focus now. You'll need it for the final test for this part of the training. Final test. Noriyuki reached behind him. His hand revealing metal claws strapped to it. Wait, what are metal claws for? Mwahahahahaha. Noriyuki reached behind the other side, this time revealing a small black object with wooden trim around the sides. A chalkboard. He had seen it too many times at the academy to not know what it was. Even Iruka-sensei had dragged a kunai across it once to quiet everyone down. It only sent a blood-curdling chill down his spine. His face trembling. No. No way. You're the devil, aren't you, sensei? His smile widened to dangerous proportions. His eyes had an almost insanity to them. Like a sadist who loved nothing more than to inflict suffering on others. You're just realizing that now, Naruto? Just wait and see. By the time we finish this training, not even the earth breaking apart will shatter your concentration. Okay. Damn it. Naruto yelled out. He had just slammed hard against another tree trying to smack the bastard in front of him. They had been doing this for an hour now. The sun was bearing down hard. Naruto had rolled up his sleeves and taken off his hat to keep himself from overheating. Again. His sadistic instructor called out for the upteenth time. Naruto wiped the sweat from his chin. His breathing was heavy. His muscles ached like they never have before. Aching was putting it lightly. His entire body felt like it was on fire. Still, though, he didn't want to give in to this smug prick. Erg. He charged again. Getting within several feet of his opponent, he reared his fist back to send the guy flying. No. I said keep your arms up in front of you. In front. What the hell is wrong with you? Hirate yelled so loud it hurt his ears. He flicked Naruto once more. Right in the stomach as he leapt up to strike. He was sent flying back again, luckily only into a bush. Yeah, well, you said you wouldn't hit me back. Naruto accused. I'm not. I'm swatting a net that can't seem to do more than buzz around. I also told you not to let your feet leave the ground while you are facing your opponent. Now again, and this time assume the stance I taught you. Hirate ordered. Naruto stood up once more. He dusted himself off. He raised his arms, even struggling to do that from his strained muscles. His arms raised slightly above his head, his fists parallel with each other, and his chin tucked in slightly. He felt awkward. His stance all the way to his slanted posture was awkward. He couldn't imagine anyone fighting this way. When the bastard first adjusted his body to it, he complained. Something that didn't go over well with the jerk. He gripped his arms, forcing them into position. Naruto screamed in pain from how much pressure the man's grip had. The bastard didn't care though. I hate this, Naruto muttered to himself. He ran forward. His balance was off because he couldn't run like he normally would. His new sensei had expressly forbidden it without so much as an explanation. He said in the beginning this was the same style Noriyuki sensei used, but he was starting to think the man had lied. He stretched out his fist. There was no real power behind it. He couldn't build up momentum in his strikes to really get his usual impact behind them. Gah. He gritted his teeth as his fist struck his teacher's palm. It was like punching steel, yet they were coarse and rough like sandpaper. His knuckles were raw, dabs of blood from the torn skin were forming. He wanted to stop or at least mix it up with a kick or two. Something. Anything other than these weak jabs. I can't take it anymore. He thought angrily. He spun around ready to give a roundhouse kick to the guy's side. Hoping it would throw him. He would yell, but Naruto would feel satisfied with hitting him at least once. Never turn you back on your opponent. The moment you do, you die. Hirate's voice touched the back of his neck. He couldn't dodge mid-turn, nor could he block. Naruto felt a flick to his back. He was sent flying forward. His body tearing into the ground left one long indent. Again. Naruto cursed. He slammed his fist to the ground. I hate this. What the hell is wrong with this? This way of fighting is complete garbage. Any academy student could beat it. The only thing wrong is your attitude. This style is one that fool has developed and honed over his entire lifetime. You whine and complain after an hour. Pathetic. I was right that this is nothing but a waste of time. How is this supposed to match up to the way real ninja fight? A real ninja would have killed me a dozen times over. I need to become better than all the Hokage. You're not wrong about that, Hirate acknowledged. As you are now killing you would be a mercy. However, if by some miracle you do learn even a fraction of this style, then no ninja, student, or Hokage could match you. Then show me then. I don't understand what's so special about this. I need to see it to believe it. For all I know, you could just be trying to trick me. Trying to trick you. Hirate's eyes hardened. The air around Naruto suddenly became cold. He could literally see his breath. This man's presence made Naruto scramble backwards. Fear was invading him. Unmovable and unshakable fear. Fear that reminded him of times where he faced down true killers like Zabuza and Orochimaru. This felt worse though. His heart felt like it would burst. Like killing himself here and now would be preferable to the man walking towards him. You insignificant, ungrateful little bastard. You're shown nothing but kindness and then turn around and say you're being tricked. We spend our precious time giving you training, feeding you with our own money, and helping you to stand on your own. Yet you have the nerve to say I'm tricking you. Like I would demean myself to do such a thing to someone as undeserving as you. Hirate unsheathed his katana, the blade resting against Naruto's neck. I was right. You're not worth all the effort. Naruto, through adrenaline and his burgeoning skill in meditation, saw every move he made. His arm shifting back, sword positioned to sever his head with a single strike. His body, looming over him like a large shadow with no sign of escape. Naruto was frozen. His breathing had stopped. The only thing that he could feel were the cold tears running down his face. He tried to speak. To beg. His words wouldn't come. I'll make it painless. Consider it a final mercy. The blade shined. It moved in a clean, swift motion. Naruto could see the movements. Like a camera, as frame by frame the blade shifted closer to his neck. This can't be how it ends. Naruto internally screamed. What the hell do you think you're doing? The blade was cold. Almost unbearably so, as it was within an inch of his neck. Naruto barely noticed the black figure standing at his assassinator's side, grasping his arm. Noriyuki stood there like a demon out of hell, looming over the man who had nearly taken his life from him. Well, Hirate. He said dash. Something immature and insensitive. My god. It's almost like he's 12 years old. Funny how a man literally 100 years older than him seems to have the same level of patience. Noriyuki pulled the arm away from Naruto, ensuring the blade was no longer resting against his neck. There seemed to be a struggle between the two. Both gritted their teeth as their strength was being pushed against the other's. Noriyuki then smiled. If you won't behave, Hirate, I may have to reconsider a new outfit design. One that includes a red swirled crest on my back. What do you think? Naruto saw it but couldn't believe it. The man who had caused him so much terror had just turned white as a sheet. He even dropped his sword. He stumbled back several steps, retreating into himself. His head lowered to the ground. Fine. The bastard muttered. Good boy. I'll deal with you later. Noriyuki spoke neutrally. He turned to Naruto, who still trembled where he was laying. Noriyuki placed a hand on his shoulder. Naruto, listen to me, I need you to relax. Naruto could hear the words but his body couldn't respond. His vision was getting hazy. He still couldn't breathe. Naruto, listen to my voice. Breath. Naruto gasped. He felt the air fill his lungs before ungracefully exhaling. His body seemed to act without his brain directing him to do so. He sputtered, holding his chest. His stomach was tying itself in knots. A feeling of bile rising up. He couldn't hold it. Bleh. Huddled over, he threw up what was most likely last night's dinner. He felt Noriyuki-sensei rub his back as he spewed. That's it. Just let it all out. No, I'm okay now, Noriyuki-sensei. He felt like crap, but that wasn't anything new for him, especially after the last few days. Noriyuki? Is that what you told him your name was? Still have a sick sense of humor as always, Hirate snidely commented. You be quiet. One more word out of you and I'll make Naruto my new partner. Apologize now. Noriyuki demanded. His voice was so harsh and unforgiving it hurt Naruto to be the reason for it. No. Naruto yelled. He pushed himself up to his feet as he wiped his mouth off. He was right. I said something I shouldn't have. Naruto turned to bow to Hirate. I apologize. I was just frustrated and thought you were trying to get rid of me by making the training too hard. I was wrong. Naruto kept his head low. Normally he would have yelled at the jerk for such a monumental overreaction, but his words were true to an extent. If this truly was Noriyuki-sensei's fighting method, then he was wrong to dismiss it. Noriyuki placed Naruto's hat back on his head. It seems like out of the two of you only Naruto here can act like the bigger man. I'm disappointed in you, Hirate. Hirate didn't respond. Didn't even flinch. He just kept his head low with his eyes still staring at Naruto. You did a real shit job teaching his Hirate. You can at least own up to that, can't you? I taught him as I have instructed others in the past. Nothing more, nothing less. Noriyuki palmed his face. Yeah, that type of training died out when the both of us were young men, like a million years ago. Just because a certain training method worked for others doesn't mean it will work for everyone. Naruto here is a natural kinesthetic learner that adapts faster with visual stimuli. If you had actually shown him the style, then he may have been more patient. Kind what? I don't understand. Naruto was losing sense of the conversation. It just means you do better learning through physical means and gain inspiration from watching others, Noriyuki explained. Oh. Does this mean you're taking over for this training too, sensei? Sorry, but I'm actually just a clone. The boss wanted me to check up on you. His eyes shifted to Hirate. It's a good thing I did. Then could you at least show me your fighting style? I really want to learn it. Noriyuki tapped his lips. What to do? What to do? How about this instead? If you create some shadow clones, we can have my new whipping boy go and show you himself. Naruto nodded. His trembling arms forming the clone seal. He was so tired that only 5 appeared. He didn't know how much more he could take. Perfect. Oh, whipping boy. You'll be giving Naruto a personal demonstration. So get to it. Hirate grunted, laying his sword to the side while he undid the top half of his robe. Naruto gawked at how different the guy's body was. The robe he wore was kind of loose, giving him a larger figure. This wasn't the case. He was lean, but the amount of muscle he had would have made Bushi or Brow Sensei's jaw drop. Scars riddled his chest in more places than Naruto could count. He was still taller than Noriyuki by half a head, but he seemed to have a disposition that made him appear much larger. The most noticeable thing Naruto saw were black bands wrapped around his waist and biceps. Those bands around his body are special training weights. Hirate isn't too fond of direct body seals. Noriyuki explained, guessing at Naruto's thoughts. Clones. Ready? Yeah. The quintet yelled. They looked like crap right now. Torn clothes and blood dripping from their hands. All right. Take it slow, Hirate. Begin. Hirate rushed forward, pushing off his back leg. Before the first clone could realize what was happening, its head snapped from Hirate's jab to its chin. It ragdolled several feet before dispelling. Memories of which Naruto shuddered from. The idea behind this style is similar to my air cannon. You must keep your body tight and contained. By applying chakra and expelling it at your feet, you get a burst of speed to get within the enemy's defenses. Your hips are always pointing towards them, your eyes always watching their whole body to watch them move. You're small, Naruto, but that can be an advantage with this style. The second clone recklessly charged forward, leaping towards Hirate with his fist reeled back. It swung its arm forward to hit him, but found itself off guard when he tightened his guard and twisted his body out of the way. Hirate curled his arm, hitting the clone sideways in the head. This style involves weaving to avoid enemy attacks. Something that complements the intense concentration of the meditation exercises. Similarly, many shinobi have lost their lives because their hands were down at their sides and didn't have their guard up in time. A costly mistake. Noriyuki shook his head. You must face forwards and never turn your back on your opponent, or it may put you at risk. Since you lack sensory type abilities at the moment, I suggest having at least one clone watching you back at all times. The last 3 clones, seeing that they were getting torn apart, decided to surround their imposing opponent. They all charged at once. Hirate waited for the one in front of him to reach within arm's distance before vanishing. Naruto could see him shift around the side of his clone until he was behind it. Needless to say, it didn't stand a chance. You mustn't back up. You must shift around them and always see where you're going. Aim for points on the body where major organs are located to effectively dismantle your foe. Hirate wasted no time lining up the 4th clone in front of the 5th. Hirate's whole body shifted on one side. His arm extended further than his previous attacks. The clone blanched as it was launched into the 5th, dispelling both at once. Lastly, the issue of power. I overheard your issues with this. Naruto nodded. He was half paying attention as he watched in fascination to the simplicity yet ruthlessness of the style. Yeah, my punches didn't have any power in them. Yes, most ninjas try to use momentum to build power when using taijutsu. However, you are trying to be better than most ninjas. A simple means of generating a small amount of momentum is through shifting your hips to give your attacks that extra snap. That, however, pales into the real method this style uses. Here, watch. Noriyuki's clone walked up to a large tree. He raised his fists, steadying himself. We humans are beings that feed off of the oxygen in the air. We are living lungs that pump it through our bodies. In a sense, we are air cannons made flesh. That's why power, true power, come from the breath. Kiya-ini. Thumb. Noriyuki's jab blurred forward towards the tree. Like a shockwave, the air rippled around it like a white beam. The tree and subsequently the dozen or so behind it partially disintegrated. A gaping hole where his sensei's fist had lined up. There. Not too shabby, he said, admiring his handiwork. He turned back to Naruto with a knowing smile. Whoa, so awesome. Naruto was enthralled now. I'm going to learn how to do that. Who knows? This takes years to learn. For now you'll run through the basics. Hirate will observe you while you practice against your shadow clones. Am I clear on that? Whipping boy. HN, said Whipping boy grunted as he redid his robe. He walked away from the clearing heading back to town. He didn't even look at them as he walked past. What's that guy's deal? Naruto bit out angrily. Don't take it personally, Naruto. It's not you he has the problem with. It's complicated. Just know I'll have a clone watch you guys from now on. I won't interfere unless he pulls this crap again. I doubt it though. Why can't your clone train me then? I need Hirate to get comfortable around you. I need to show him you are not a threat. If he wanted to, he could have dispelled me and ended you right now. I doubt he'll try again, but that is not a complete guarantee. Naruto sagged. Just great. Noriyuki patted his shoulder. Prove to him he's wrong about you, Naruto. Not for his approval, but to show him through your determination that his way of thinking about you is wrong. Naruto nodded. He would show him. He would show everyone just how amazing Naruto Uzumaki really was. Chapter 7, Metamorphosis. Ding ding ding. Naruto shot up out of his bed as he slammed his palm down on the alarm clock. He had set it early today because he had been too restless to actually sleep. Yesterday had been the end of the initial 2-week training period, and for this last week he had been told they would be working primarily on ninjutsu training. Naruto had learned 2A rank jutsu from Noriyuki on the first day they met. Jutsu that he had been practicing on the side after his sensei went to bed. Now though, he would be learning more techniques that would help him become stronger. Atke. Ow. Naruto yelled as he stubbed his toe. It was dark out and his hotel room was a mess. Because of his stupid sensei, the cleaning lady stopped coming by their rooms. He didn't want to know what he did to make that happen. He bent down to pick his shakuhachi flute case. His sensei had bought it for him, saying it was something he should practice. Naruto really didn't seem interested in learning to play a musical instrument until he was told it would help with his training. Naruto practiced a little every night. According to the other guests next to his room, he had a very, very, very long way to go. At least, that's what he thought when he kept getting all those noise complaints. Setting it aside, he readied himself, getting dressed. His new dress clothes had been made a week ago. To Noriyuki's promise, they were definitely mission-worthy. They were more flexible and didn't constrict his movements. They were also softer and fit snug against his body. While the style had been basically the same, black vest and pants with an orange dress shirt, these were much more durable. His sensei had told him Sarostree's spider silk weave was said to be 5 times stronger than steel. Additionally, they were water-resistant while allowing air to pass through. He didn't overheat like he did in his old clothes. The coolest part was that the silk was made from some sort of ninja spider, so they were chakra conductive. Naruto checked himself in the bathroom mirror. He was still struggling to get his tie right. It took him 2 or 3 times to get it on properly. There was no trick either. Noriyuki-sensei said this tie had to be done up a certain way to allow it to come off when it needed to be used as a weapon. He also made sure to apply cologne and to ensure all his buttons were done up correctly. Naruto nodded to himself as he gave himself one last check. He had to look good or his sensei would criticize him relentlessly. Appearances were important to Noriyuki and this suit was treated like holy armor by him. Taking off down the hall and outside he caught a glimpse of Hirate lounging on the hotel roof. He was staring off into the ocean, probably waiting for the sun to come up. It was a nice view so he couldn't blame him. Other than a small glance between the two they didn't converse. It had been like that since their first day of training. The only time he spoke was when he was pointing out a flaw in his training. Other than that it was a comment at Noriyuki-sensei whenever he did something that got on his nerves. He still didn't know what the guy's problem was but at least he didn't try to kill him again. According to Noriyuki, his training in this new taijutsu style was going well. He hadn't even come close to doing what his sensei had done to those trees but that was moot. All he had to do for now was get the basics, which he had done. He had to practice weaving and dodging a lot. It became difficult when he had logs and rocks flying at him. Still though, he was progressing and that was good enough for him. Naruto ran up the hill taking off towards their training spot. He jumped up on top of the buildings to take a shortcut. He knew the fastest routes through the town thanks to Mizuri and her friends showing him around. It was also more preferable to take the rooftops from now on. Thankfully, the strain his resistance seal had on him felt marginal now. He really wanted to avoid the townspeople as much as he could. Those special challenges his sensei gave him each day as part of his training didn't do much to ingratiate himself with the townsfolk. Naruto shivered at the things he was made to do. If this had been the Leaf Village they would have been hauled into the Hokage's office for the crap they pulled. Or, at the very least, run out of town. The sun hadn't come up yet so there were very few people out preparing for the day ahead. Naruto wouldn't take chances though. He had made it the spot in 10 minutes, winded as he ran as fast as he could. While he made good time it felt like every day of training he felt slower. The resistance felt the same yet Naruto found himself with his own thoughts longer and longer. He considered dropping the seals to see if he indeed had gotten faster but held it off when Noriyuki-sensei said there was a purpose to leaving them on until the end. Regardless, he still got there faster than normal. He wanted every minute to be about training. He only had a week left and he wanted this to learn as much as he could. Hua. Hey. Hua. Hey. Naruto stopped. He reached the clearing to see his sensei standing smack dab in the middle. He was standing there with both his arms sticking out. His eyes were closed and he was breathing deeply. Then he slowly moved his arms in a large arc, parallel to each before bringing them back in front of him. He then stretched them far apart while raising his head towards the sky. Finally, he did a full spin before putting his arms back out again. This process repeated several times. He could only stare wondering what the heck he was doing. He had never seen his sensei do anything like this. Was he stretching? Practicing some technique? It didn't seem like it. Sensei. Naruto called out. Oh, Naruto, you're early. Good, you can come join me. He said, not stopping his motions. What are you doing? Meditation. My version anyway. Naruto nodded. He should have realized it from the breathing. The deep and rhythmic tone it had with his movements. It seemed weird to Naruto that someone could meditate standing up, but Noriyuki-sensei was the weirdest person he knew. I thought you said we would be doing ninjutsu training today. We will when the sun comes up. In the meantime you should meditate to help clear your mind and help focus it for the training ahead. Today's training will be very taxing for you. Physically or mentally. When his sensei said training would be tough, that meant it would deal with something he wouldn't like. Something that made him uncomfortable. Both, he replied frankly. Naruto sighed. He didn't like the sound of that. He formed as many clones as he could before settling into his own training. In the beginning Naruto didn't really get the whole meditation thing. He did it when he trained with Team 7 but never saw any real benefit other than to bore him to death. His sensei had been right though about adding physical actions to it. It helped him stay focused on what he was doing. Initially, he thought all the big claims his sensei made about this were a bit far-fetched. After the 4th day he had started to see the results. After that session he didn't feel hungry. He felt satisfied. In fact, after every exhausting task he was made to do he always felt calm, relaxed, and energized when he finished meditating. Even a lot of his stress of his future seemed to fade. It got to the point where he started doing it outside of their typical training times. This training didn't come any easier than the rest though. After the ear-bleeding distractions from the first few days came more difficult challenges. He meditated while he sat under a waterfall. The water was so cold he thought he would die from hypothermia. On the other end of that he trained while a ring of fire burned around him. The heat and the charred air irritating his breathing. From there things got even more dangerous. Meditating while balancing over tall ledges, while other times he was sitting on sharp objects that cut him while he sat. Yesterday had been toughest challenge yet as his sensei had increased his resistance seal several times over. The immense strain on his body being dulled by the intensive focus of eating ramen and his feeling of gratitude. It was tough but he had managed it. Asterisk clap. Clap, asterisk. Okay. Sun's up. Let's get to it then. Naruto finished his set, clasping his hands together. Gakiso sama deshita, he muttered softly as he breathed out. He opened his eyes to see the sun shining over the trees. He looked to his sensei who smiled at him. He was ready for whatever challenges that would come this week. So to start off I will explain to you the 7 nature transformations of chakra. I remember you saying you didn't know what wine chakra was when we first met. Correct. Naruto nodded as he sat on the stump, listening intently. He had never heard of them before but they sounded awesome. If this included wind chakra then it must have to do with his sensei's cool air cannon. The 7 different transformations are as follows, he started, taking a scroll and writing on it, earth, wind, water, lightning, and fire. These are the 5 basic elemental chakra natures that shinobi possess. They are so fundamental that the 5 great nations of this continent are named after them. Like with the Hidden Leaf Village being within the Land of Fire. You understand? Naruto frowned. I don't get what these nature transformations are. Before that though you said there were 7. I only see 5 here. Yes. On the left side of these 5 we have yin release and on the right we have yang release. These 7 make up the basis for all ninjutsu and genjutsu. Okay, so how does this relate to my training? You need a strong fundamental knowledge of what chakra you possess as well as the potential natures of your future opponents. Like you, they will possess one or more of these attributes so understanding them will help you defeat them. Naruto's face scrunched up, his arms folded. So I can use one of these nature thingies. Ha 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 ha. Yes. To put it simply Naruto, the 5 natures in the center are the basic jutsu you're familiar with. Watch closely. Noriyuki turned around. He flashed through some hand seals before slamming them on the ground. Earth style, rock shear. The ground tore up with stone. Jagged rock lifting up the landscape. Images in Naruto's head clicked. So the 5 in the center are jutsus like Sasuke's fireball jutsu or Kakashi sensei's water clones. Noriyuki nodded. Yes, any jutsu that deals with one of these 5 are an elemental chakra nature. My air cannon uses wind to power it. Naruto was beaming now. He had wanted jutsu like this for a while but Kakashi sensei had always told him that it was difficult and to focus on his basics first. Now it seemed like he would get his chance to learn. A stray thought then crossed his mind. Hey sensei, what about jutsu that aren't like these 5? I have seen jutsu that uses ice and sand before. Great question. Those are what are referred to as Kekai Genkai. They are a mixture of 2 natures. Ice jutsu is a mixture of water and wind, while sand is a combination of wind and earth. Naruto scratched his head. He guessed that made sense. He wasn't sure how that actually worked. Huh? Kekai Genkai? But doesn't that mean? Naruto's brows furrowed. What about things like the Sharingan and the Byakugan then? I don't see what those have to do with these elements. That gets into yin and yang. Yang represents life. It deals with the body and the physical nature of the world. Yin represents the mind and spirit. It deals with the manipulations that distort those two attributes. I know this might not make much sense, so I have a great analogy that may help you understand. Good, because I didn't understand half of that. Simple was better in Naruto's book. Ha. Yes, I thought as much. Anyway, for this analogy I want you to imagine a bowl of ramen that dash dot. Ramen. Can it be miso with extra pork? Naruto blurted out. Noriyuki smirked at Naruto's interruption. Of course. Now for this bowl of ramen I am going to apply yang chakra to it. By doing so I can manipulate the physical qualities of it. I can make the toppings wider, the noodles longer, or I can even make the broth richer. To a human this would be the same thing with their bodies. They could become much larger, more flexible, more durable, etc. Thoughts of some of his friends came to him. Koji, being the first person as his expansion jutsu, seemed the most relevant to his sensei's analogy. Yang chakra could manipulate a person's body. Not too complicated, Naruto thought. Okay. What about yin then? Let me ask you this first. How do you know ramen tastes good? Naruto groaned. Didn't we already cover this weeks ago? Ha 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 ha. I don't mean it in the emotional sense, Naruto. I mean physically, how do you know it tastes good? Naruto frowned. I know by eating it, I guess. Yes, more specifically, through the taste buds on your tongue. Noriyuki tapped his mouth. The moment the ramen touches your tongue, your brain receives signals that lets you know what you're eating actually tastes good. It's the same with your sense of hearing, sight, smell, and touch. Just information your brain receives through your everyday interactions. For that bowl of miso ramen, while it may not change physically, I could use yin chakra to manipulate the senses of the person eating it so that it tasted like broccoli and smelled like old cheese. Naruto's nose scrunched up. Okay. Really? That sounds awful. Ha 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 ha. That's why yin chakra is the basis for all genjutsu, the art pertaining to trickery and manipulating the senses of others. Does this help you understand yin and yang now? Yes, it makes sense. But that still doesn't explain the Sharingan. Think about. A Kekkei Genkai is a combination of two elements. The Sharingan uses yang chakra to manipulate the physical attributes of their eyes, turning them black and red, while using yin chakra to alter their own senses and how their brain sees the world. Naruto stood up pacing. Things were slowly clicking in his mind. He thought a lot about his friends and their jutsu. How they would be categorized and where they would fit. He knew Koji's and Kiba's jutsu would probably be yang related. Ino and Shikamaru's were probably yin. Hinata and Neji's were a combination of both. Some were a bit hazy and tough to figure out, but he got the gist of it. It got him excited thinking about his own now. Maybe he too could do something super cool. His only go-to jutsu had been shadow clones, and even then he thought they were limited back then. He stopped pacing and turned to Noriyuki. Oh yeah? What about my shadow clones? What would they be considered? Another good question. Also a perfect transition into the next topic. But before that I'll answer your question. I want you to form a clone seal. The one for the basic clones, not your advanced shadow clones. Okay. But just a heads up, I couldn't do this jutsu no matter how many times I tried. Naruto frowned as he formed the seal. He knew it well. He had practiced for years trying to pull it off. More so than any other jutsu. No matter what he tried, he could only make one that looked like it was lacking any form of life. Not a real confidence builder. Good. Now I want you to look at your hands. You see your left hand is underneath your right, yeah. Yeah. Is that important? He walked over to Naruto, grabbing his right hand and moving it off to the side. I want you to make clones now. Use only your left hand to make them. I want you to imagine that your right hand is still there though. Naruto blinked. Regular clones. With only one hand? I can't even make them with two. Noriyuki nodded slightly. Just trust me. Naruto sighed. Alright then. Here goes. He built up his chakra, putting in what he thought would be a reasonable amount. He was too used to the shadow clone jutsu at this point to make a decent comparison. Clone jutsu. *Poof. What followed was one of the biggest shocks of his life. The entire field was filled with clones. Regular, intangible clones. Clones that held him back for years. Ones that had forced him to use desperate measures to pass the graduation test. With removing a single hand he had done what he thought had been impossible. How? I don't understand. Noriyuki smirked. He patted Naruto's stomach. Your chakra comes from the coils behind your abdomen. Your left hand represents your yin chakra while your right hand represents your yang. Since the chakra source was closer to your left hand, it converted into yin first before taking trace amounts of yang from your right. It's to ensure the clones are visible to those around them but remain tangible enough to not be blown away by the wind. Okay, then why wasn't I able to do them before? It seemed like he did everything right. He had done this all the time in the past. How did one hand make the difference? That's the big mystery I can't solve. I'm not surprised no one was able to figure it out. You seem to possess a larger amount of yang chakra. It was making your clones too tangible to form properly, yet not enough to make them fully formed shadow clones. It's why your transformations are more solid as well. Noriyuki then guided Naruto's hands so that they formed the shadow clone seal. When both your yin and yang are met without any conversion, they create clones that have a tangible body and a mind to act on their own. When the shadow clone's body, their yang chakra, is destroyed, the yin chakra in them that holds their memories is sent back to the original. That's how your shadow clones work. Naruto looked at his hands. His signature jutsu was much more complex than he had realized. He looked around to see his 1,000-odd clones. He couldn't help but feel a little upset. As much as he knew it wasn't anyone's fault, it was still a bitter pill to swallow. Anyway. For the next week we're going to be working on 3 areas for your ninjutsu. The first being your elemental chakra nature. So which of these am I going to learn? Naruto asked as he waved his arm through one of his now dispelled clones. Typically there is a special paper that would tell you which one you're most suited to. That would be the one you would learn. Only one. Naruto frowned. But I know that Sasuke can use fire and lightning. In most cases people only possess an aptitude for one element. It doesn't mean that you can't learn all of them. It's just your primary one will be easier to learn. After your primary element, it can become easily apparent how difficult it is to learn a second. For some it's like writing with their opposite hand, different but manageable. In most cases it's like trying to cook with only your feet. Since I already know which element you possess and the fact we only have a week, we will be sticking to that one. Okay then, Naruto muttered. He really wanted to use more than one. The look on Sasuke's face when he could use more elements than him would have been priceless. Which element am I then? Noriyuki paused. He let out a big sigh, then covered his ears. It's wind. Yes. I can use wind. Naruto hollered into the air. It had been the one he wanted to learn the most. It meant he could learn to use Noriyuki-sensei's weapon. He was so pumped now. Wind, wind, wind. I can use wind. He held out his hand pretending there was an air cannon in it. He could almost imagine himself shooting down the bad guys with one arm while holding Sakura in the other. I'm glad you're excited. Anyway, that's the first part, the second is your shadow clones. Naruto stopped. He turned to his sensei with a confused look. My shadow clones? Why? I already mastered them. Huh. It seems to me like you seem to know less about them every time I speak about them. Noriyuki shook his head. Regardless, I have seen how you have used them, Naruto, and I can tell you are not making the most of their abilities. Honestly, you send them in like little ants to be stepped on. It's like you enjoy seeing the memories of how they die. Pouting, Naruto folded his arms. Little, HN. Fine, whatever. What's the third thing then? Noriyuki removed Naruto's hat and ruffled his hair. Ha 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 ha. You're still so sensitive about your height. The third thing will be done on the last day of training. It'll be a big surprise for you and probably the strongest technique I'll be teaching you. Naruto perked up at this. Ah. Can't you at least give me a hint? Sorry, but it's best left for the end. We'll be heading to the waterfall nearby for your wind training. Oh, and before I forget, after today we'll be increasing your resistance seal as well. It will help with that last technique. Naruto palmed his face. Just great. I'm going to be stuck going through town again. So much for staying out of sight. Ha 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 ha. Oh Naruto, you poor fool. You had better prepare yourself. The special challenges this week will be much more hands-on and much more dangerous. Noriyuki said with an evil glint in his eye. Naruto blanched. For some reason he suddenly felt ill. It was cloudy outside, dark, from the fresh rain that had just fallen. Small drops still fell in a light drizzle. This poor weather didn't stop Sakura Haruno as she walked swiftly down the streets of the Leaf Village carrying a basket full of apples. She had been waiting for this day for weeks now. After the love of her life returned to her, she couldn't help but cry in relief. Relief that the one she loved wouldn't leave his home, and relief that the person who drove him to run away would never get his disgusting hands on him. However, there had been a ban on his visitation for over 2 weeks now. She was told he needed special healing and rest. He still needed it apparently. It was only after 2 weeks of begging the Hokage that she could go in and see him. It was when she approached the hospital that her steps began to feel heavy. The last time she had seen him was the night he ran away. Their last conversation had played in her mind every night. She had thought about everything she could have done or said that would have kept him from leaving and saved her friends from risking their lives to get him back. Don't worry, Sakura. I swear I'll bring Sasuke back. It's a promise of a lifetime. The memory of her friend Naruto resounded in her as well. She wished he was here right now. He would have marched right in with her, and then the three of them could talk things out together. They could be a team again. Sadly, Naruto was away on some mission along with Kakashi-sensei. She had asked why she wasn't sent as well. All she was told was that she was needed here in case Sasuke woke up. To her that made sense. Still, I hope they come back soon, she muttered lowly. I still need to thank Naruto. He kept his word to me. She smiled, thinking about what goofy or idiotic boast he would say because of it. He would give her a big grin and claim it was all in a day's work for the great Naruto Uzumaki. Once they were back, then she could throw a thank you party to the rest of the retrieval team. They had all recently been released from the hospital. It was just bad timing on Naruto's part. Hello, I'm looking for Sasuke Uchiha's room. The nurse at the desk gave her a strange look. Her eyes shifted. She was glancing around the waiting room like there was something there. Sakura turned her head to see if there was someone behind her. There wasn't. Is there a problem? Lady Hokage said I could visit him. No. Just go up 1 floor. He's in room 34A. Please keep your visit short. Sakura nodded, walking up to Sasuke's room. She was stopped at the door by 2 imposing-looking Umbu guards. She felt relieved knowing they were there to protect him from any one of Orochimaru's lackeys. Sakura Haruno. The bigger, tan-haired, bull-mask Umbu asked. His tone was stern. Not even an ounce of courteousness to it. Yes. That's me. Please hold a moment. We need to search you for any objects that may be used by the PRI patient. It's for his protection. Please show us what's in the basket as well. Sakura handed it to him as a female Umbu came behind her and patted her down. She didn't have anything that could be used as a weapon. It was hard to believe this sort of treatment was necessary. The gruff-looking Umbu took off the basket's cloth. Apples? Is there a knife to peel them? Yes, underneath. She felt uncomfortable as he stared at her. Like she had done something wrong. You can have one, if you like. The Umbu shook his head. He took the peeling knife out of the basket before handing it back to her. Alright, you have 10 minutes. Please do not touch the patient. If he regains consciousness during your visit, you'll be asked to leave. Finally, do not tell anyone of your visit. Hokage's orders. He held the door open for her. Nervously, she walked in. The room was dark. It only had a small window that had its curtain drawn. There was also a green hospital curtain that surrounded Sasuke's bed. In it, though, Sakura could see his outline. Her heart was pounding. What would she say? What could she say? She was torn. A part of her hoped Sasuke would remain unconscious while she poured her heart out, while the other part hoped her voice would somehow bring him back to her. She drew back the curtain. Her heart ached. He was just laying there. His body wrapped in bandages. His limbs restrained to the bed railings while his eyes had a special seal upon them, wrapping around his head. He looked like a prisoner. No. He is a prisoner, she thought bitterly. Her fists clenched. She didn't want to think about this fact. What this could possibly mean. Sasuke may never be accepted as a ninja again. Not after what happened. She had prayed that he would be given leniency. Hoping the mark Orochimaru put on him had played a part in his leaving. It didn't look like that would happen. If only I kept my mouth shut, she sobbed. You wouldn't have to suffer like this. Her tears flooded her vision. She tried desperately to wipe them away. Why couldn't you have just stayed with me? I swore I would have made you happy. I would have done anything to do it. Don't you know my heart aches to see you like this? She turned her head. This was too much for her. She needed to leave. Leave before she completely broke down. She placed the apples by his bed before turning away. She was about to walk back towards the door before she froze. Sakura. It was so faint and quiet that she barely heard it. For a moment she thought her ears were playing a trick on her. She turned to him, trying to ensure she was just hearing things. He still lay there immobile. Sasuke-kun. She whispered. Sakura. He slurred faintly. It was so quiet and weak it sounded like a gentle grunt. She looked towards the door wondering if the Umbu out front heard him as well. She knew she should have let them know, but she may not have another chance like this. She rallied her nerves, stepping softly towards his bed. Sasuke-kun. I'm here. She cooed quietly. Sakura. He mumbled again. His face twitched, hands clasped. It was like he was still unconscious. Perhaps he's dreaming about me, she thought. The idea of him dreaming about her made her heart flutter. It meant that after everything she was still on his mind and still in his heart. Sakura, don't leave me. He shifted uncomfortably. His lips quivering. She realized what this was. It's not a dream. He's having a nightmare. She placed a hand on his arm while the other ran her hand through his hair. Tears streaming down her face even more. It's okay, Sasuke. I swear I'm never going to leave you. I'll always be there by your side no matter what happens. His body seemed to lay still due to her touch. She felt relieved because of this. To her it meant the bond they shared was still strong. That she could comfort him meant there was still hope to set things right. She put on a small smile as she watched him sleep. She stared intently at his face. What's this? She questioned. It had been dark in the room so she couldn't really see it, but Sasuke's nose seemed darker. Like he had black makeup on. Is it some sort of bandage? She pondered. She moved her hand to touch it. She jolted when a hand grasped her wrist. She was about to scream when another hand grasped her face tightly. Her eyes widened. The bandage fell from Sasuke's eyes as he sat up. The restraints were no longer on his wrists. On my side? Good. You can be my shield then. Sasuke's cold voice resounded in the room. So unfamiliar to his voice of indifference and stoicism that Sakura had been familiar with. MMMRRMR. She tried to scream out, but his hand was bearing down so hard on her jaw she could feel it crack. She stared helplessly as the black cross-shaped mark on Sasuke's face spread. His skin turned a dulled gray and his natural black hair became wild mane of pale matted blue. The worst yet was his eyes. His Sharingan blazing as his sclera became a soulless black. Before her eyes the boy she loved was transforming into a monster. Crash. Behind her she heard the door burst open. She was spun around forcibly. Standing there were the two Umbu guards, both with small tantos drawn. All she could do was stand motionlessly as Sasuke dug something sharp next to her neck. Sasuke Uchiha. You are ordered to stand down immediately. The bigger Umbu yelled. She felt the sharp pain dig closer into her neck. Take a step closer and I cut her throat. He spoke. Sakura's eyes widened. There was no hesitation in his voice. No sense of rationality or any hint at a reasonable way to abate the situation. The two Umbu didn't look like they were going to make a move, but Sakura could see through the tears that this wasn't going to stop them for long. Stand down at once. This is your last warning, Uchiha. The female Umbu held her hand out. She lowered her blade. She's your teammate. I know you don't want to harm her. You're not thinking clearly, Sasuke. Orochimaru's curse mark is affecting your mind. She said calmly. Please Sasuke, Sakura begged. Don't do this. This will only make things worse. Please. This isn't right. Sasuke, to Sakura's surprise, eased his grip. For a moment she thought he was actually calming down. Make things worse. He said tonelessly. This isn't right. He balked, his voice getting gradually louder. Sakura could feel his body shake. Do you know what's not right? The man who murdered 300 members of my clan. My family. The man who is out there free to do as he pleases while every idiot here seems to be okay with it. Are you all retarded? Nothing else except this matters to me. You people are nothing to me. Don't any of you idiots get that? I want to make things right, yet it's always the same, forget and move on. To give up on my goal. I hate those words. I hate them almost as much as him. They're the words of cowards and losers. Sasuke then started laughing to himself. It was filled with mirth and madness. Ha! I guess I shouldn't be too surprised. You guys let Orochimaru walk all over you and he's out there as well, living freely to do as he pleases. A man like him would outlive this pathetic village by his own power alone. Yes, I see it now. This village is a victim of its own weakness and I won't associate with the weak. The two Umbu seemed irritated by Sasuke's rant. The larger Umbu rushed him, his sword ready to strike him down. Sakura could only watch helplessly as he charged. The thought of being stabbed through flashed in her mind. Ha! So weak. These fools have only proved my point. Ah! To Sakura's shock, the female Umbu jumped beside her partner. Not to assist him but to stick the blade into his side. He went down in an instant. She stood there staring at her fallen comrade. Almost like she was in a daze. She then looked at Sasuke, then back to him. She began shaking. What have I done? How? I thought. She said, perplexed. Her voice trembled. Never look an Uchiha in the eyes. You were under my genjutsu the moment you entered. Sasuke boasted to the distraught women. Sasuke Uchiha. I'll kill you. She charged him, hoping to avenge her slain comrade. Shishikachichikachichiki. An ominous dark blue glow filled the dim room. The sound of tiny birds emanating all around. Sakura knew the sound well. Fool. I can see everything you do. Sasuke's lightning struck out moments before the blade came down. Chidori. The woman's chest was pierced by Sasuke's arm. Her body went limp as Sasuke lifted and tossed her over his shoulder. Sakura could hear the crashing of the window and subsequent light filling the room. Sasuke had just killed two Umbu with only his eyes and using one hand. Now for you, Sakura. Kiya. She yelled as she was pushed forward. Her back crashed into the wall. Grunting as the pain resounded through her body. She lay there staring back at Sasuke. Her eyes widened seeing his full visage. Two large grotesque hands protruding from his back like wings. His skin covered in dark scale-like tumors. This wasn't Sasuke, this person standing before her was truly a monster. I should really thank you, Sakura. If it wasn't for you I wouldn't have had the time to transform. Being a hostage suits you. Ha. I'd say it exemplifies all your talents. As a reward and for old time's sake I'll be merciful and kill you swiftly. Sakura's eyes widened in terror. Forcing her body up in hopes of getting to the door to get away. Her injured body struggled to move. She made it a foot before she saw Sasuke's shadow looming over her. He was staring down at her. Looking at her like she was an insect that needed to be squashed. It's a shame it wasn't Naruto. He muttered, I guess killing you though will hurt him just as badly. What that fool ever saw in someone like you only proves his stupidity. Next time I see him he won't win by luck. I will destroy him in an instant. Sasuke raised his arm. Black lightning emanating violently from it. He reared his arm back ready to end her life. Goodbye Sakura. The last thing Sakura could see before the bright flash enveloped her was a figure in black jumping in front of her. A figure wearing an Umbu mask. Wait, what? How the hell is wind weaker than fire? Naruto exclaimed like he had just been told his coupons for free ramen had just expired. His sensei had started by mentioning the relationships between the 5 elemental natures and which were weaker to each other. He understood that by putting water on fire that it would go out, but how was fire stronger than wind? Think about it, Naruto. You stoke a fire with wind. The oxygen fuels it to allow it to grow. If an enemy uses a fire jutsu that is stronger than your wind, then it will only make it grow bigger. Naruto paused. His lips curled. Does that mean wind and fire make a strong combination? Yes, they do. They make a powerful and dangerous combination. So my wind could support Sasuke's fire, Naruto thought wistfully. If only things had been different, then maybe their bond would have been strong enough for him to stay. He didn't know what he was doing now. He only hoped Sakura was happy and could be there for him during this time. So my wind will be a poor match to fire. Yes. It is the common held belief that the 5 elements have these inherent strengths and weaknesses over each other. You also said your friend uses lightning? Well, without getting too technical into the ionization of particles in the air, wind acts as an insulator to lightning. Essentially a barrier that can redirect it. So my wind is weak to his fire but strong against his lightning. Shouldn't I learn some water jutsu then? Then I would be able to, wait. You said common held belief. With Noriyuki sensei he never lied to him. However, he was very specific with his words and Naruto had really tried to focus on the small details of his instructions as best he could. Noriyuki gave him an acknowledging smirk. Good, you're learning. Just as wind can fuel a fire, it can also be manipulated and weakened. By reducing the amount of oxygen in the air you can effectively kill any fire jutsu. But doing so would require mastery over wind. Mastery only a small handful can actually pull off. So the natural advantages are actually just the belief of those who lack real mastery. Noriyuki tipped his hat, his stare full of intent. Those who truly master their element have no weaknesses. Naruto matched his stare. Then what are we waiting for? Be warned, Naruto, this will be where things will get technical and a bit messy. What I will teach you will all be necessary for your training. However, what you will learn will be more in-depth than any other wind user can provide. Do you understand? Naruto nodded. He was ready for anything. If mastering wind meant he could conquer all the other elements, then this would be his sole focus. He was never too keen on learning too many things at once. He liked focusing on a single task to get it done. Otherwise everything felt so incomplete. Good. Now I will briefly explain to you the 5 different properties of wind. I will give you examples of each of them and different training exercises to help you master them. Over the next 5 days you will practice each aspect. For this I have a number of training tools we will use. Naruto groaned. He was all too familiar with his sensei training tools. Him hating them with a passion would be putting it mildly. From Noriyuki's summoning jutsu came a number of mismatched items. All unique and lacked any sort of uniformity. There were flat disc weights of various sizes. Pieces of paper tied in a small bundle next to a black marker. The most noticeable was a large square cage with a black cloth over it, indicating some type of animal like before. Naruto was most surprised to see a bowl of instant ramen. He didn't know how ramen would help with wind training, but he wouldn't complain. Alright, let's begin. The first aspect I will explain and the one we will focus on for today's training. This aspect of wind will be cutting. Cutting. Yes. Wind is primarily used as a means of cutting. When coated on the edges of swords it can enhance their sharpness several times over. However, this can also be applied to almost all weapons, ranging from kunai and shuriken to simple everyday things like paper. Let's use a demonstration. Here, Noriyuki handed Naruto a regular kunai and then pointed across the river. I want you to throw it at that tree over there. It wasn't a difficult task. Naruto took the kunai, stepping up to throw it. It soared through the air, landing smack dab in the middle with a loud thunk. Not bad. Now let me give it a try. Noriyuki was folding a piece of paper in his hand. It was shaped into a bad-looking kunai. A paper kunai? Really? Noriyuki shrugged. You know how big into art I am. So why not? Naruto knew that fact very well and would not like to think about that fact at the present or in the near future. That was saved for him and his therapist. Now watch. He threw his paper kunai from his hip. It flew without making a sound. What happened next left Naruto's jaw dropping on the ground. Swish. The paper kunai hit the handle of Naruto's kunai, splitting it along with the 20-meter tree vertically. Both halves of the kunai remained stuck into their respective halves even as the tree split apart into a wide V. Whoa. Ha. Looks like I won this contest of sharpness. As you can see, by applying wind chakra to the edge of the paper, I made its cutting power much stronger. Strong enough to cut through metal. For cutting its sharpness, that's key. Making my chakra so thin it could fit in the space between two blades scraping against one another. The applications for this are endless. Watch. He walked up to the river. The water was rushing swiftly from the waterfall. He placed a single foot on top of the water. With wind chakra there isn't anything that can't be cut, and it doesn't require use of my hands. I can direct wind from any part of my body. The rushing water halted as though an invisible wall was blocking it. Naruto was still gaping from such indescribable sights. How? Are you really expecting me to do that? Naruto asked incredulously. No. I'm only showing you the applications and where to start. You'll have to progress to this point. He tossed Naruto a small piece of metal. He caught it awkwardly in his hands. It was a small round silver coin. That coin is made of a mixture of chakra metal alloy along with a tungsten and a mixture of precious metals. It's the strongest metal in the world. It took me 20 years of intense training to make even a dent into it. If you can cut through that, then you can truly say you have mastered this aspect. That being said, you should start with a leaf or a rock though. This can be something you can practice on the road. Now on to the next part. Whoa, wait a minute. I have a ton of questions first. So much of this didn't make sense. The first bit was how to even turn his chakra into wind in the first place. Then came how he made it so sharp. There were so many small things he needed to know. Later, Naruto. We don't have the time. Normally this training takes years to simply do the bare fundamentals. This training will only be possible because of your use of shadow clones. Besides, this won't be like meditation training either. Meditation helps to heal the mind, which is why using shadow clones benefits from it without cost. Using it on challenging tasks like this will increase your mental fatigue by a lot. So right now you need to pay close attention and save your questions for later. Fine. Good. Now the next aspect is precision. He walked over, taking a piece of paper and marker. He quickly drew what looked like a dying tree. He held it up to show Naruto. He may have loved art, but Noriyuki clearly sucked at it. After cutting comes precision. Too many idiots flail wind around like a blunt instrument. Being precise can mean the difference between life and death. Suddenly the paper around the tree's crudely drawn outline came off like it had been cut with scissors. Wow, that's pretty cool. Indeed. I don't know if I can emphasize enough how crucial this aspect is. To me this is probably the most important for its primary use. Let me show you the difference between how a so-called master would consider precision and my standard. He picked up a leaf and held it between his fingers. Swiftly the leaf fell into two halves evenly. For most, a clean, straight cut is enough to show skill. Noriyuki rolled his eyes. Those people are morons. This is the level of mastery. He took another leaf. This time he spread his fingers apart, showing two full leaves. Naruto could make out the slimy insides of one of the leaves and knew what had just happened. The leaf had been cut into two along the edges. Naruto took both halves to examine them. They were so thin it boggled his mind that you could cut something so precisely with just chakra. It also doesn't have to be flat objects. Having a good sense of shapes is also crucial and can save time. He picked a rock off the riverside. It was large and jagged. Definitely not one would use to skip across the river. He clasped it in his hand for a moment before blowing into his hand. Dust and dirt flew into the air, revealing a perfectly round ball. Look familiar? Naruto's eyes widened. That's like those small metal balls you use for your air cannon. That meant he would never run out of ammunition when he could just make one out of a rock. Then another annoying fact came to mind. Hey. You said I couldn't use it because you were limited on ammo. Ha 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 ha. Yeah, I lied. Ha 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 ha. Stupid jerk sensei, Naruto cursed. His stupid sensei never let him even breathe near the damn things. I want to learn how to use them. Well, you're in luck. The next aspect is compression. The one I love the most. Especially being able to compress the air into small, confined areas. I already showed you how my air cannon works, and I know you have already worked on this with the Rasengan. So instead I'll give you the exercise you'll practice. He grabbed 2 deflated rubber balls from his pile of training equipment. He held one in each hand. This exercise is simple. Fill the balls up with wind chakra. Both balls quickly began to grow and smoothen out as chakra filled them. Watch carefully. I'm going to drop both on the ground. One of these balls is filled with wind chakra while the other has regular chakra in it. Both fell to the ground. One bounced up high while the other fell down with a thud. Wind chakra is lighter and has molecular bonds that transition energy much differently than regular chakra. As you just witnessed, the ball with wind chakra bounced higher while the one with regular chakra, which was denser energy, didn't. That's all there is to it. Wait, that's it? Just fill up the balls and if it bounces I'll have mastered it. Yeah, pretty much. You already have practice in this area, so that'll be enough. The last 2 aspects sort of cover this as well. This aspect was more for my own personal experience and reference. Nothing too complicated about it. The next 2 I can explain together, force and stability. A lot of force is put into wind jutsu by building up chakra and using hand signs to mold it. None of these aspects I have shown you actually need the use of hand signs. This is pure chakra manipulation and something true masters don't need to worry about. Noriaki picked up one of the metal weights and placed it on his palm. There is no set training structure for this. By building up wind chakra, having it precise, compressed and stable, you can perform feats mere mortal dreams of. The weight lifted from his palm, shooting up into the air. Naruto quickly lost sight of it. It's like your hand is an air cannon, Naruto observed. Correct. That too only scratches the surface. When one can balance control, power, and stability with their wind, they can reach heights others can't. Literally. A gust of wind blew from Noriyuki as he slowly rose from the ground. Slowly he was rising higher and higher into the air. Naruto gasped as he reached above the tree line. He could see small whirlwinds at his feet. He had done it so casually. His posture slack and his hands in his pocket. He remained there for several moments longer before descenting with the weight he had blasted up moments earlier. That's how you've been getting away. You always bail on me when the special challenges go sideways and you disappear like a gust of wind. Naruto had seen people use a lesser technique like this before. It didn't surprise him that his sensei could fly, rather, it annoyed him that he didn't realize it before. He had been put in many situations where he found himself literally holding the bag while his sensei vanished without a trace. In some places with no real means to escape, unless they could fly. What, you didn't think I crossed 2 countries when we escaped prison by foot, did you? Naruto grumbled, scratching the back of his neck. Well actually dash dot. Fool. Know this Naruto Uzumaki. There are only 2 skills I have mastered in my century of life. Breathing and running away. Both of which I hold great pride in. He yelled, striking a triumphant pose. Naruto palmed his face. Oh brother. He sighed, knowing this would have been the outcome. Okay, so what are we starting with first? He asked, trying to move this along. Wait. There is. One more aspect I want to show you. Noriyuki rubbed his hands awkwardly. Brows furrowed with his lips pursed. Naruto frowned. Cutting, precision, compression, power and stability. That's 5, he observed, counting them out with his hand. I know, it's just there is one more aspect I wish to talk about. It's technically part of compression but focuses on the reverse. Technically it could be considered a forbidden aspect to wind. An aspect that's only real use in battle, unlike the rest, is used to brutally kill and torture enemies. It's by far the most difficult to use. One that only I alone have mastered. By Noriyuki's tone, Naruto knew this was the uncomfortable topic he had hinted at earlier. The part he wouldn't like. Noriyuki gripped his shoulder tightly. Before I go further, I need to know if you're serious about your goals, Naruto. I mean, are you truly willing to reach that height? You have come far, but this shows the true face of what being a human truly is. It will determine your resolve to grow. Naruto had already been through a lot to falter now. If this aspect was this dangerous, it meant that it could make him stronger should he master it. He gave Noriyuki a sincere nod. Yes. I promised to surpass all the Kage. If this means learning something forbidden, then that's what I'll do. Noriyuki stared at him for a moment. He sighed, walking towards the cage. Just don't regret that statement later. He lifted the cloth, revealing a brown-furred rabbit. Just an ordinary one. Nothing interesting about it as it sniffed the air. Noriyuki stared at it without any emotion on his face. He had an intensity that sent a shiver down his spine. He didn't even glance Naruto's way when he spoke. The sounds of the river and the waterfall beside them seemed to fade as he heard his words. Tell me, Naruto, do you know what a vacuum is? A vacuum? Naruto pondered. Thoughts of their hotel's irritated cleaning lady came to mind. You mean the thing that is used for cleaning? Not quite. Same name but different premise. A vacuum is a space devoid of matter. This includes things like pressure and air. You see, the wind we create with chakra is different from normal wind. It's thicker, more tangible, for the lack of a better word. By using wind you can make a barrier around an object, trapping it. Something the 5 aspects cover. Now do you know what happens to water when the air pressure drops? Naruto shook his head. He was barely following. He understood the part about making a barrier to trap enemies but nothing about this vacuum part. How do you heat up water for your ramen, Naruto? I use a kettle. Yes, by putting it over a fire. By applying heat. How much heat do you normally use to heat your kettle? Naruto shrugged lamely. I use a stove. So quite a bit, I guess. It roughly takes a temperature of 100 degrees to boil water. Outside right now it's almost 25 degrees. The water doesn't boil at that temperature because of air is applying pressure to it, absorbing the radiant heat and keeping the water vapor stable. When you remove the air and drop the pressure, the temperature needed to boil water becomes significantly less. Meaning without air in a contained chamber you could boil water at 25 degrees or less. The way Noriyuki spoke was so monotonous. So devoid of emotion it bugged Naruto. It bugged him a lot. So water boils without having to use a lot of heat. So what? Naruto gritted his teeth. His eyes felt moist, yet he didn't know why. What was his sensei going to do? Noriyuki turned his head slowly. He stared at Naruto unblinking. Naruto's stomach felt tight. Like he was going to throw up. His ears rang at what Noriyuki said next. Don't you know, Naruto? Due to the plasma in our bodies, blood, it's made up of 50% water. Naruto's eyes widened. Everything he just heard hitting together like blunt hammers. He stared at the rabbit, completely oblivious to its surroundings. He watched on as a white sphere wrapped around the cage. Noriyuki's right hand seemed like it was pulling out a stream of mist from the sphere. Wait, stop. I get it. I don't need to dash. Shut up. Noriyuki boomed. You want to become the strongest, well, you need to know as much as possible. So watch. Naruto's fists tightened. Jaw clenched. He could hear the squeaks and shrieks as the rabbit was suffocating. It pained him to listen. For a typical human, they can survive roughly 10 seconds in a vacuum. Without air pressure, the gases and liquids in our bodies expand and evaporate. The airways will eventually freeze and the body will eventually become cool. Following this will be paralysis and the body convulsing from the sudden shift in blood pressure. The body will then expand, nearly doubling in size. Naruto could only watch as the rabbit's mouth and eyes began to expel a reddish mist. Its body trembling erratically like it was seizing up. Slowly it stopped moving and its body began to expand like the rubber ball from earlier. It was grotesque and horrifying to watch. Vacuum style, decompression decimation. He released the jutsu, the white sphere dissipating. The rabbit's carcass began to contract and shrivel up. Like a crumpled piece of paper made of flesh and fur. In your travels you'll encounter those who use jutsu that have vacuum in their name. This, Noriyuki said pointing to the carcass, is the real deal. The strongest and deadliest wind-style jutsu in the world. Triple S ranked in difficulty. Naruto didn't say a word. He just contemplated what he just saw and whether he could do something so horrible to someone. It was terrible to see it done on a rabbit. It wasn't like it was for food or anything. It was torture, plain and simple. For this training the exercise will involve instant ramen. Naruto's eyes shot up. His sensei stood there holding the instant ramen bowl. How could he use ramen for something so wrong? He thought furiously. After telling him how ramen meant to him, he pulls this crap and says that the two had such a connection. What could he say though? What did he know about the world when he had been stuck in one place his whole life and didn't seem to understand how it worked? He had read a few of those books Noriyuki gave him. They were interesting. Naruto never really liked reading, but these were different. They were compelling. Telling stories of the lives of people who struggled in ways he fully didn't understand. These past 2 weeks had been the same. There was so much he hadn't done. So much he probably wouldn't have done unless prompted to. When he really thought about it, he couldn't deny that it helped him grow. Not as a ninja but as a person. He was like the people in those books. It was him that was the problem. He was the one that needed to change. First you unpeel the top, he said, walking over to the river, dipping the container in. Fill it with cold water. Then reseal the lid, minus a small opening. Really make sure the lid is secure. After that you just draw out all the air. He walked back over to Naruto, taking a seat adjacent to him. He held the ramen in his hands for several moments before handing it to him. I'm sorry Naruto, but this is a necessary evil. You will encounter enemies in your travels that will seem unbeatable. Ones that normal jutsu or means won't cut it. This technique has no equal and defies any law of nature within the confines of Earth. So know this, every living thing in this world breathes, and if you master your breathing and can manipulate the breathing of others, you will reach the pinnacle of strength unmatched by all. Naruto took off the lid. The water was boiling and the scent of miso hit his nose. Naruto's mind drifted to the first time he was introduced to Team 7. He said he hated waiting for his ramen to heat up. In fact, it was practically the only thing he could say he truly hated. Even now. This terrifying technique, for all its wrongs, could eradicate this hatred over waiting 3 minutes for his ramen to cook. The conflict Naruto felt left him hollow to how he was now. That simply learning cool techniques helped him become stronger. No. Everything was relevant. We'll start with cutting leaves after you finish eating, Noriyuki said, placing chopsticks on top of the bowl. We have 6 days and things will only get harder from here. Naruto stared up at his sensei. A feeling of determination filling him. He was tired of being a little kid. He needed to grow but still felt like he was the same as he had always been. He needed to change that. Sensei. I have a request I would like to ask of you. Canonical Omake. Noriyuki sensei's second special challenge. Naruto was grinning like a loon as he walked back to the hotel. He was still pretty banged up from that jerk's, Hirate's, training session. The training session where he got super pissed and tried to kill him. He would try and put that behind him though, as his first official date with Midori and her friends went super well. They didn't get mad at him for anything he said, they laughed at his stories, and most of all he got more kisses. Teehehehe. I really gotta thank Noriyuki sensei. That's good. So long as it went well, said Sensei whispered into his ear. Auk. Naruto jumped as his teacher's sneak attack on him. Ungracefully he landed on his butt. What the hell, Sensei? Are you trying to give me a heart attack? Ha 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 ha. A heart attack at 12 years old? Now that would be depressing. He spoke holding a hand out to help him up. So how did it go? Naruto beamed a smile. It went great. Noriyuki rubbed his cheek. He held up his thumb revealing a faint color of pink. I can tell. The evidence is all over your face. Naruto blushed. He quickly wiped away the evidence of his date off his face. It didn't help that he had unknowingly showed everyone as he walked through town. Small glimpses of women giggling at him as he walked back in a happy daze came to his mind. Shut up. You don't have to tease me, you know. Noriyuki patted his shoulder. Ha 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 ha. Well, you can tell me all about it on our way to tonight's special challenge. What? Really, Sensei? Naruto whined. I'm completely exhausted. I just want to dip in the hot springs and go to sleep. Relax, tonight's challenge won't be strenuous. In fact, it will involve a beautiful woman. I don't have to get another kiss, do I? Not that Naruto would complain too strongly about it if he did. Ha. If you could get a kiss from her, then I would become your damn apprentice. The two walked towards Nagaya's center plaza. The stars were out now and the full moon was shining brightly. It gave the small town a quaint and beautiful look to it. Very different from the sea of trees back in the Leaf Village. The ocean seemed to sparkle as the waters shifted. It would have been nice to stay out longer for his date. What is my challenge tonight? Noriyuki's grin widened. It glowed like the moon. Tonight all you have to do is draw a picture. Naruto blinked owlishly. A picture? That's it. Yup. I told you that you have to broaden your horizons and experience more than what is required as a ninja. Art is something you haven't been exposed to. Naruto folded his arms, face scrunching. Yeah, I don't really get art. It's a lifelong discipline. One I regretfully didn't get interested in until much later in my life. I mean, what's the point of stealing priceless works of art when I could make one and save myself the trouble? Ha 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 ha. Naruto sighed. You're so weird, Sensei. Weird is good, he stated nodding. Regardless, we have reached our destination. Naruto looked up to see a large green building. It was larger than the others surrounding it, with multiple windows. The lights were still on in all of them and Naruto could see people walking in through the double-wide doors in the front. On the top of the building it wrote, Nagaya Community Center. A community center? Yes. 3 times a week there is an art class run by Madame Akumi. They alternate between portraits, sculpture, and landscapes. Tonight's portrait drawing, with Madame Akumi being the model for the picture. Oh, so Akumi-san is who I'm drawing. I'm guessing she's the pretty lady you're talking about then. Noriyuki nodded. Couldn't keep my eyes off her, or my hands, he muttered that last part quietly. They walked into the building going off down the hall to reach a room in the back. Inside Naruto got a strong whiff of paint. There were wooden stands with large pieces of paper on them. They all surrounded a small platform in the room's center. There were already a dozen or so people in their seats. Oh, Noriyuki-kun. You made it. Naruto turned to see a woman in a loose white robe approach them. She had long wavy brown hair and deep brown eyes. Her red lips looked thick but supple. Naruto could easily see that she was shapely, going by his expertise with the sexy jutsu. Although she was definitely more voluptuous than Naruto was. Of course, madam. After you showed me around today, I would be ashamed of myself not to come and learn from such a talented artist. It's been a passion of mine for a long time. He took her hand and kissed it. Naruto could see her blush. She acted like Sakura when she was around Sasuke. No. It's me who should be thanking you. You helped carry my supplies today and treated me to lunch. It was my pleasure. Besides, I hoped to broaden the horizons of my ward here in the ways of art. It has been difficult exposing him to the culture of this land. Too many care for the hot springs and not much else, I'm afraid. He placed a hand on Naruto's back, pushing him forward. Hello, he managed. She was really pretty and Naruto's attention was more focused on her robe. It was slowly slipping and Naruto could almost see her. So you want to learn art? She asked, leaning in on him. Naruto jumped slightly. Why yeah. I want to become like sensei. She smiled softly. It made Naruto's face heat up. She looked older. Like she was in her 30s but had this appeal to her that he didn't really understand. She rubbed his cheeks. Her hands smelling of flowers. He's so cute. He is like a miniature version of you, Noriyuki-kun. Maybe someday. Before we start, are there aprons we could wear? Naruto's new to art and I don't want his clothes getting paint on them. Getting stains out are near impossible for these clothes. Yes, of course. They're over on that table. We should really get started. She walked to the center stage as they grabbed their aprons. So this is why you couldn't train me in the afternoons? Naruto accused. Among other things. Could you really blame me? Naruto turned to Akumi as she was explaining something to the other artists. He violently shook his head. Nope. She's really pretty. Ha 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 ha. Well, you're going to see just how much. Naruto frowned. He didn't understand what he meant by that. They both sat near each other as Akumi explained their goal for tonight's class. I will be in the pose that Lord Toriyama's wife took as she stood aboard the galleon of his treasure fleet. Imagine her as she stood amongst the glittering pile of gold and jewels that adorned the ship. You may start whenever you like. Naruto took his brush in his hand ready to start. He had never really done art before unless you count the graffiti on the Hokage faces. This would certainly be a challenge but he would do his best. He tilted his head past his stand towards Akumi. She stood there in a weird pose. Naruto blinked. He blinked again. He blinked several more times before his eyes nearly popped out of his head. He turned to Noriyuki who was shaking with laughter at his internal crisis. Naruto hooked his finger towards Akumi, mouthing the word naked. His sensei had known all along about this and didn't tell him. Without missing a beat Noriyuki leaned over, barely containing himself, whispering into Naruto's burning ears. Isn't art great? That's it for part 3. Thank you for watching and see you on the next video.